a certain Superman in Marvel. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 176 Pacific Rim. Yennefer walked over to Joshua, glanced at the girl beside her, and said, "Here you go." She handed Joshua a generous sum of money. She still had a soft spot for him, and her hand gradually moved to the back of Joshua's hand. She looked at Joshua. Joshua's eyes fell on Yennefer. He had just been exploited by Nono and Eri, so for now, he didn't think much of such a thing. Besides, Yennefer had already been made into a cream puff by several men, so he decided to forget it. Joshua pushed Yennefer's hand away and said, "Not interested, Yennefer." She withdrew her hand and said, "You're really weird." "Really?" Joshua said. Maybe it was a little weird, but he didn't want to have sex with Yennefer. Instead of having sex with her, he would rather go back to Boa Hanku. Yennefer crossed her arms and said, "That girl likes you." "Oh?" Joshua glanced at the girl. That was really strange, considering he had just chopped to her. Yennefer said, "If you marry her, you'll have a wealth of treasure." "I'm not interested," Joshua said, waving his hand and turning away. Seeing Joshua leave, Yennefer pondered. Was it because of her elven blood that he didn't want to marry her? This made her mutter a few curse words. She glanced at the girl, who was watching Joshua's departure with some hesitation. She said, "Give it up. She's not the right match for you." The girl looked at Yennefer, her expression somewhat dejected. What to do next? Joshua looked at the ceiling. Just pick one at random, and see what luck brings. Soon, Joshua appeared in an empty area, on a beach. He looked around and suddenly saw a huge robot approaching him. It was the Danger Wanderer from Pacific Rim. However, the robot was in great repair, as if it had just been battling a monster. Joshua's interest peaked. He watched the massive mech suddenly collapse to the ground, and two people, one large and one small, ran over. Monsters and mechas. He planned to capture monsters, not the ones that appeared on Earth, but the king of monsters. It felt quite challenging. Joshua headed towards the Danger Wanderer, his starting equipment. Just as the old man and the young boy were rescuing the pilot, Joshua walked in. "What are you doing?" the old man asked, sensing Joshua was up to something. "Nothing, just modifying the mecha," Joshua said. Joshua was making modifications faster, but to go further he needed other materials. He needed help from others before he could build the mecha he wanted. An hour later, Joshua stood on the mecha, and it stood up again. He felt a little stiff as he moved, but it was enough for him to kill a monster. His plan was to kill a monster, prove to others that he could save the world, and then obtain enough materials to build an even more powerful mecha. "Has the dangerous wanderer not been found yet?" an officer asked, his voice a little hoarse. He hadn't expected even the wanderer to fail. Training mecha pilots these days is so difficult. Silence began to spread, and suddenly a woman said, "The wanderer has resumed communication." "What?" The officer's eyes widened. The wanderer was fine. "Hi there," a childish voice called out. It wasn't the Raleigh brothers. The officer asked, "Who are you and what happened?" Just then, a loud crash echoed. "Alpaca," the childish voice cursed. The officer's face darkened. He knew that was a Chinese curse. "Sorry, I wasn't cursing you, I was cursing the monster." "We'll kill it soon." "What do you mean? Kill the monster? Weren't the Raleigh brothers piloting the mecha?" Suddenly, the monster's wail echoed. The noise gradually faded. "Okay, I killed it," Joshua said, piloting the mecha forward, carrying the monster's corpse. "Who are you, anyway?" "Where's Rolly?" the officer asked. "My name is Joshua Parker. I'm a scientist, barely." "As for Rolly, someone rescued him," Joshua said. Rolly was still unconscious. Joshua's words bewildered the officer. "Barely a scientist?" A moment later, Joshua's voice was heard complaining. "Your power supply isn't working. I'm on an island now. Come rescue me," Joshua said. The wanderer was running out of energy to continue. A technician located Joshua's location. "Go rescue him," the officer said. He had so many questions. The officer continued to question. How do you operate the Wanderer? The officer asked. Everyone knew it was practically impossible for one person to operate this mecha. I made some minor modifications to the Wanderer, turning it into a single-person mecha, Joshua said. The officer, what do you mean by modified the mecha? Can you even call that a minor modification? Soon, Joshua's rescuers arrived. The rescuers saw a giant mecha behind Joshua and a dead monster. When they found Joshua, he was playing in the sand, building a castle. Pretty fast, Joshua said. The leader asked, how did you kill it? I killed it with a mecha. Take me to your base quickly. I can't wait to build a mecha. Joshua was going to the monster world to capture the monster queen. Let's go, the leader said. When Joshua reached land, he found a large crowd, all of them curiously observing him. Joshua had no interest in arguing with them. Hello, I'm the person in charge here, my name is. Joshua handed him a USB flash drive and said, I need the materials on it, the sooner the better. I have to build a mecha. If you don't have anything, don't bother me. Now let someone take me to the place where you build mechas, the officer said. You are a man of unknown origin. Why should we trust you? Joshua said, I killed a monster with the almost scrapped Wanderer, so let me study it now. Don't play any power games in front of me. It's easy for me to kill you, so just shut up, you cotton planter. Joshua's words were sharp. Chapter 177 Godlike Mecha. The black officer's expression turned grim. He looked at Joshua and said, if you can't help us, then you'll have to consider the consequences. I might kill you. If Joshua couldn't help them, he would kill him without hesitation. Being publicly reprimanded was more than he could bear. If he could, he would have killed Joshua right now. Hearing the black officer's words, Joshua grinned and said in a low voice, you're quite amusing. Let's see who kills who first. Joshua left. The black officer's desire to kill Joshua grew even stronger. However, killing Joshua now would be bad for him and could even lead to his dismissal. A useful scientist was far more valuable than him. The black officer waved, and a non-commissioned officer approached him. Keep an eye on this man. Arrest him if he makes any unusual movements, the black officer said. Yes, the non-commissioned officer nodded. Joshua was quickly taken to the research center, where he familiarized himself with the equipment and began working. He wasn't shy about the technology, as some of it was difficult even for Tony Stark to grasp, let alone these people. This time, the mecha had been given numerous features, such as enlargement and reduction, flight, and energy shields. Considering the monster's destructive power, Joshua constructed the mecha from nanomaterials, allowing it to recover instantly even if severely damaged by a monster. The scientists around Joshua were bewildered. At first, they could understand what Joshua was up to, but as time went on, they realized they couldn't comprehend it anymore. This was something beyond the technological capabilities of this world. There were so many details to verify, so they could only take note and slowly study them. Soon, the first mecha was complete. It resembled the Ranger, but only in appearance. As the mecha was completed, the black officer eagerly surrounded Joshua with his men. Considering Joshua's technological prowess, the black officer said, I won't kill you, but I will imprison you and gradually rob you of your knowledge. You'll live a life worse than death. The black officer was pleased. Joshua sighed and said, if you hadn't shown up, I wouldn't have remembered you. You're courting death, HMPH, capture him. The black officer waved his hand, signaling his men to capture Joshua. Just then, the giant mecha Joshua had completed slammed down. With a resounding roar, the mecha smashed the man in front of Joshua into pulp. He was truly overestimating his capabilities. The mecha's palms opened, and Joshua stepped forward. A female scientist, looking at Joshua, said, what are you going to do? If you kill him, you'll be wanted. Really? That's a bit troublesome, but let's just leave it at that. I'll kill as many as come, Joshua said. The woman watched as the giant mecha carried Joshua and walked out. Bullets rained down on Joshua and the mech, but the mech's deployed shield was able to stop the bullets. This mech was technologically advanced, unmatched. It was worthy of being called a god. Just then, a massive mech approached. It was the Wanderer, repaired. Joshua, get out of the mech, or you'll be killed, the pilot of the Wanderer shouted. You're so long-winded, Joshua couldn't help but exclaim. If you want to fight, just fight. Why are you so long-winded? Joshua's mech was called the Capture, after all, because he was going to capture the monster queen. The Capture's chest gradually lit up, and the next second, golden energy erupted. The wanderer was instantly engulfed, instantly melted by the scorching energy. The golden energy blast even pierced through a mountain. The people watching this scene felt a chill down their spines. This Joshua was a madman, even more terrifying than the monsters themselves. The golden beam of light was like a spear of destruction. At this point, the wanderer was left with only its iron legs. Joshua had connected all the electronic equipment. His face appeared before the crowd. He waved and said, "My name is Joshua Parker. You might not recognize me, but that's okay. I want to warn you not to mess with me, or you'll end up like this." The scene switched to the tall, handsome figure of the capture, followed by a burst of golden energy. The crowd watched as a mountain was destroyed. "Did you see that? If anyone wants to challenge me, be prepared to have their country destroyed." Okay, end of chat. Joshua closed the video. "Let's go, it's time to complete our mission," he said. The chest of the mech opened, and Joshua was thrust into it. Then, Joshua piloted the mech away. By this time, the world was still in shock. They began collecting data on Joshua, and discovered that he seemed to have appeared suddenly, possessing technology far beyond this world's. He appeared out of thin air, and so people began to believe he was a man from the future, a savior. However, this future being seemed rather ill-tempered. "What can we learn from his research data?" a man asked. The female scientist looked at the officer and said, "His research is all here, but we can only understand 1%. There's a lot that needs to be verified, and I don't have the ability to do it." Her expression was bitter. She had thought that with all the data, they could replicate Joshua's giant mecha, but now it seemed they simply couldn't do it. No wonder he hadn't set up defenses, he clearly knew they couldn't build it. What a bunch of rubbish. The officer roared inwardly, but kept silent. He said, "Next, we'll organize the scientists in this world. Go for it." He turned and left, gazing at the battered officer. What bad luck. It was common knowledge that the officer disliked Joshua. He thought he could control him, but he was met with complete disregard. What a rotten luck. He was like an ant. Deep in the ocean, Joshua had reached the rift where the monsters had emerged. Now it was his turn to enter. He swiftly piloted his mech, swiftly darting through. In a moment, he had passed through the rift and arrived in another world, a world of monsters. The monsters, bewildered by Joshua's presence, quickly realized why the mech had appeared there. But they soon realized what was happening and pounced on him. These behemoths, weighing thousands of tons, looked terrifying. Joshua switched his mech into combat mode, its appearance transforming. A sharp sword appeared on its right arm, while its left transformed into an energy cannon. The mech raised its left arm and began to charge, completing the charge in an instant. Bang! With a resounding roar, the energy cannon unleashed a golden energy attack. A monster was struck, its body blasted away, its flesh and blood splattering everywhere. "Come on," Joshua exclaimed excitedly. Fighting monsters in a mech was so cool. An even larger monster charged towards him. This one was over 70 meters tall, its body incredibly massive. It felt like it could smash through a city. It was truly incredible. Joshua unleashed an energy blast, and the monster suddenly opened its mouth. Blue energy gathered inside, then spit out. The golden and blue energies collided, creating a massive shockwave that sent smaller monsters flying. Even the giant monster shook its head. Then, a figure appeared. It was a mech. The mech's blade slashed at the monster's head, decapitating it before it could react. The massive head fell to the ground. Joshua turned his head and saw that the monsters were increasing in number. Chapter 178 Monster Queen. Joshua found the Monster Queen. She was enormous, even mechas looked like babies before her. He dropped the monster head in his hand, and the Monster Queen's voice filled Joshua's mind. Human, the Monster Queen's head suddenly split open, revealing a blue woman. It was only the upper half, with a lower half connected to its massive body. It was truly enormous. This was the Monster Queen in her anthropomorphic form. Her voice was gentle, like a Busta woman. "Human, you're different," she had observed other humans, but Joshua was completely different. He wasn't afraid of her at all. In a matter of moments, Joshua was surrounded by monsters again. The Monster Queen felt that if she controlled Joshua, she would quickly seize the human world. Therefore, she wouldn't kill him. The monsters were agitated, but without the Monster Queen's permission, they could only growl. Joshua spoke, "You're mine." The Monster Queen looked at Joshua with some confusion. This human's words were a little strange, but she still had to catch him quickly. The monster queen let out a piercing cry. Hearing this, the monsters rushed frantically towards Joshua. It's no use. Joshua activated the energy barrier, which suddenly expanded, knocking the monsters that approached him to the ground. He then controlled the mech and began to run. At full speed, it reached the monster queen in an instant. The monster queen's anthropomorphic body quickly shrank back into its skull, its fractured head snapping back together. The enormous monster queen roared and launched herself at Joshua, charging forward with a frenzy that shook the earth with every step. Joshua quickly unleashed his gear filled with PIM particles. The gear attached to the monster queen, causing her body to shrink rapidly. Soon, she went from 100-meter-tall behemoth to a palm-sized creature. Joshua grabbed the shrunken monster queen and exclaimed, "Get the monsters back." The monster queen was bewildered. Why had she suddenly shrunk? Although surprised, she obediently told the monsters to retreat. The mech's chest opened, and Joshua emerged, grabbing the monster queen. It was truly amusing, and Joshua quickly took a liking to the monster queen. She was a massive monster, even mimicking a human. How cool! The monster queen's hideous head split open, revealing a small, delicate woman. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you," Joshua said, reaching out and caressing the monster queen's anthropomorphic head. The monster queen didn't resist, knowing she couldn't resist this strange human. "Even if you kill me," she declared, "I will reappear and continue to expand into the human world." The monsters desperately needed new habitats, so the monster queen would continue to appear. Joshua said, "That's not good. I don't want a monster queen who can't control monsters." The monster queen was called the monster queen because she could control monsters. But once she lost control, she was no longer a monster queen, but at most a larger monster. Joshua thought for a moment and said, "I'll help you solve your survival problems, and you'll be my pet." The monster queen looked at Joshua in confusion and said, "You'll help me destroy humanity." Joshua was stunned by the monster queen's words. He was still human, after all. How could he possibly help the monster queen destroy humanity? Seeing Joshua's strange expression, the monster queen felt a little foolish. It was only because his words were so strange that she thought this way. Joshua said, "I can help you create a brand new world. You monsters can survive in this new world, so you don't have to occupy the human world." "I see. But is it really possible to create a brand new world? How can it be done?" Joshua's words were beyond her comprehension, leaving her in a state of confusion. "What should I do?" the monster queen said. "Just watch. I'll prepare and wait for my true form to descend," Joshua said. True form? The monster queen looked at Joshua, feeling that he was even more of a monster than she was. Joshua's room. He removed his helmet and began locating the game body, quickly finding it. "Begin your descent." Joshua's body quickly vanished. Meanwhile, his game body gradually grew stronger. The monster queen sensed Joshua's aura growing increasingly terrifying, like that of an ancient behemoth. This aura terrified her, and she instinctively lowered her head in submission, even sticking her butt out. If Joshua agreed, she would accept. The aura began to unleash, and not only did the monster queen submit, but the surrounding monsters also lowered their heads to the ground, not daring to look at Joshua. Soon, Joshua had fully descended. He stretched his limbs and said, "To create a world, you need a true form," the monster queen hummed. Joshua began to create the world. Now, he was no closer to being a god. Joshua's energy unleashed, and a brand new world gradually emerged. "By the way, do you have any requirements for this new world?" Joshua asked. These monsters would be his subordinates from now on, so he wanted more of them. After all, they were his subordinates, so naturally, he should take better care of his own. The monster queen hurriedly said, "It just needs to be big enough and suitable for us to live in." Her requirements were modest. "No problem," Joshua agreed. The world before him grew more solid and larger. Soon, a brand new world appeared. Joshua placed this new world in a suitable place. Meanwhile, the human leaders were debating whether to close the rift in the deep sea. One person spoke up, "Joshua is more dangerous than the monsters themselves. Locking him away in the monster world is the best option now. We've already obtained his technology, we just need to analyze it." Another person chimed in, "He's from the future, coming to help us. We shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this." "Do you know what he did? His mech smashed a high-ranking general to pieces with a single punch. He's dangerous, like a dictator," someone else said. The debate heated up, but ultimately the decision was made to blow up the deep-sea rift leading to the monster world. They quickly began their operation, with 2 mechas entering the deep sea, armed with a large number of nuclear weapons. They advanced through the depths, keeping a vigilant eye on their surroundings. Soon, they reached the rift, and the mech pilots, concerned by the massive rift, began deploying their nuclear weapons when someone suddenly screamed. "Something's coming out," one of the mech pilots said. "I'll hold it, you deploy the bombs." "Okay." Suddenly, a massive monster appeared, a 100-meter-tall beast with thick limbs and a powerful body. Blue tentacles clung to its neck. The tentacles swept over the 2 mechas, instantly destroying them. "What is that?" The people stared in horror at the screens. A 100-meter-tall monster? A sharp-eyed person spotted a figure. She moved closer and whispered, "Joshua is on top of the monster." More and more people spotted Joshua. An officer asked, could he control the monster? The mystery surrounding Joshua grew. "Activate the nukes." The people activated the nukes, and they emitted a fierce flash of light, but it quickly faded. It was as if an invisible barrier enveloped the warhead. Just as the nuke was about to explode, Joshua enclosed it in a circular barrier. Now this barrier contained an extremely strong force, like a balloon about to explode, but the power was completely different. "Do you want to close this crack?" Joshua patted the monster queen and said, "Let's go." The monster queen nodded and then used her tentacles to grab the destroyed mecha and dive up together. Joshua touched his chin. What should he do with this barrier bomb? Should he throw it into the city? After thinking about it, he decided not to. Many people are innocent. He could just kill those who wanted to kill him. Joshua threw the barrier bomb into the sky, and the moment the bomb exploded, dense red petals fell. Joshua said, "You're too slow. Wait here for me." Joshua's figure disappeared, and then he went to kill several people who wanted to kill him. After getting rid of these people, Joshua said, "Monsters won't attack you anymore." A woman said, "How did you do that?" Joshua looked at the person and said, "Why should I tell you, woman?" Joshua flew into the sky, a sonic boom sounded, and people covered their ears and looked at Joshua's back as he left. "Why can he fly? He's just like a superhero," one person said. Superheroes are very similar to Joshua now. They both have great strength and can even fly. Superheroes? Superheroes don't kill people like him, another person said. "What should we do next? What else can we do? We can just slowly return to our previous lives." "No, do you really believe what he said? Do you really think monsters won't attack us anymore?" Chapter 179 Joshua's Bad Taste. New Krypton. This was the brand new planet Joshua had created for the Kryptonians. Upon his arrival, he had already discovered some Kryptonians. These Kryptonians grew incredibly fast, going from infant to adult in just a few days. Of course, this was due to technological reproduction. Natural reproduction would have taken considerably longer, but the Kryptonians these days weren't opting for physical reproduction. Fiona walked beside Joshua and said, "General Zod is helping some rebels fight their oppression." "Oh?" Joshua nodded. He didn't care what Zod was doing. He was here to deliver monsters to these Kryptonians. After all, the Kryptonians were clearly short of manpower for the entire universe, and monsters could alleviate that shortfall. Joshua opened a teleportation tunnel and said, "You will command these monsters." Fiona watched as the enormous monsters emerged one after another. She was somewhat surprised. They looked incredibly powerful, even more powerful than the average Kryptonian. Fiona said, "We'll complete the mission quickly." "Yes," Joshua said. Fiona waved, and a blonde woman approached. This blonde Kryptonian, a scientist, adjusted her glasses as she gazed at the massive monsters. "We can give them special abilities, like energy absorption." She spoke a long speech, finally resting her gaze on Joshua. "Hello," she said respectfully. Joshua was now her new god, so she had to be respectful. "As you're pleased." Joshua left. The monster queen, perched on his shoulder, looked a little serious, considering the Kryptonians were so powerful. "I didn't expect them to be so powerful," she said. "If we fight them, we monsters have little chance of winning. Only a few of them are abnormal. The others aren't that strong," Joshua said. "Oh," the monster queen nodded. "I see." Joshua had just landed from New Krypton when he saw Wonder Woman. Noticing Joshua, she smiled and said, "Fiona told me you were coming. How about we chat?" "Yes," Joshua agreed. As they walked together, She recounted many things, like how Gotham had become the safest place and how Superman was still following Lois around. Overall, the world had become peaceful, but there was still one troublemaker. Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn now had two personalities, one normal and one dangerous. Her dangerous personality once nearly killed Superman, leaving Batman in a terrible state. In short, Harley Quinn was now the most dangerous person in the world, but Wonder Woman didn't mention anything about her. The two chatted for a long time, and the sky gradually darkened. Joshua threw the Queen of Monsters out the window and said, "Come on." Wonder Woman took off her clothes. "Ugh," the Queen of Monsters spat. What kind of person is that? He'd said it was his before, and now he'd mercilessly thrown it from a tall building. What a jerk. If it wanted to, it could have, so why did it have to find a human? It wandered around downstairs. Suddenly, a strange figure appeared. It was a woman. She said, "Hello, little monster." The Monster Queen looked at her and said, "I'm the Monster Queen." "Ha ha ha, really?" the woman said, squatting in front of the Monster Queen, sizing her up. The Monster Queen didn't like the look and said, "Get out of here, or I'll kill you." The woman wasn't afraid. She grinned and let out an exaggerated laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha." She looked like a madman. Suddenly, a dark figure descended. It was Batman. He cracked the ground with his footsteps, looked at the woman in front of him, and said, "Harley, what are you doing?" Did they know each other? The Monster Queen silently distanced herself and prepared to watch the show. "What? Of course I want to see the man who created me," Harley laughed. Batman didn't believe Harley simply wanted to see Joshua. He knew she intended to capture and imprison him. Batman said, "I won't let you escape this time." A scarlet armor appeared on Harley, and she began, "Because of him, I've become powerful, intelligent, and dangerous. We've fought several times, but you've never defeated me, and this time is no different. That's because I think you can still be saved." High above, Wonder Woman pressed her hands against the window, Joshua behind her. She asked, "They won't see, will they?" "No, I've cast a spell, so they can't see." "But what's with this Harley? She carries a very sinister energy," Joshua began. "Didn't you execute a bunch of villains in the square earlier? One of them was a magic user, and his magic accidentally injured Harley, causing her to develop a new personality. A very evil one." Wonder Woman groaned before continuing, "She's become smarter and more powerful. You could say she's even a little more powerful than Superman now. She's always cared about you, and she even keeps a diary. She writes most about missing you, and she even plans to imprison you and have a child with you. Could you please hurry up a bit?" "Sorry, I was just thinking about what you said. Let's finish this first." Joshua quickened his pace. "You go down first. I need to rest for a while," Wonder Woman said limply. "Okay." Joshua went downstairs, only to see Batman and Harley fighting. It was strange. Was this Harley Quinn really that freaked out? She could actually create a suit of armor that rivaled Superman's. Harley Quinn was punched by Batman. "F.K." Harley spat. Then she said, "You still have time to save another city. I've planted a nuclear bomb beneath this one. If you don't go, it'll be blown to the ground. I've given you a hint." Batman looked at Joshua. Joshua nodded and said, "Go ahead." Batman quickly left. Harley Quinn flew in front of Joshua and said, "You're so perfect. Haven't you become even more beautiful?" "I'm always becoming perfect," Joshua said. Harley said, "I want to imprison you. I want to make love to you." Harley spoke so many words in one breath, looking so eager. "Sure," Joshua said. Harley Quinn, she thought Joshua should resist. Why not? Why not? Harley Quinn couldn't help but ask. "When a beautiful woman asks me to have sex with her, I usually don't refuse," Joshua said. Harley Quinn, the corners of her mouth gradually curled up. "You're so funny." A few days later, Joshua was lying in bed playing games. Harley finally lost her patience. She thought she only needed Joshua. But she was wrong. What she wanted was Joshua's resistance, but now he wasn't resisting at all, which was boring. He should have resisted, not just floundered like a dead fish. Harley said, "No, I'm going to force myself on you." Harley pounced on Joshua. Joshua lay down while playing games, as if to say, "Whatever you want, F.K., why don't you resist?" Harley couldn't help but say. She was going crazy. It seemed like she was already crazy. "Huh? Why should I resist? You feed me, play games with me, and even take care of my physical needs, So why should I resist? Life is great, right? Joshua said. Get out, you useless bastard. Harley Quinn kicked Joshua out of her room. Afternoon. Joshua was eating when Batman said with a strange look on his face, Harley turned herself in at Arkham. What did you do? Nothing. I just stayed at her house for a few days, and then she couldn't stand it anymore. She's disgusted with me, Joshua said. Batman sat next to Joshua and said, you're deliberately torturing Harley. That's kind of true. She longed for me to resist, to show her defiance. She longed to conquer my invincibility, so I rebelled, and then she couldn't stand it. Her mentality is really bad. She must always scold her teammates when playing games, Joshua said. Batman said helplessly, don't you have a bit of the supreme power? You want me to crush Harley to death? That's like crushing an ant. It's meaningless. It's better to torture her slowly. It's more fun to watch a madman go crazy, isn't it? Joshua said with a sense of malice. Maybe it was because he was so invincible, he felt a little bit perverted. Batman also thought Joshua was a bit of a jerk. He chatted with Joshua for a few words before leaving. Joshua didn't stay long before heading home. The mutant dog looked at the monster queen with a haughty air and declared, I'm the boss. Then, pointing at the little dragon, he said, he's the second. The mutant Tyrannosaurus Rex roared. This guy is the third, and from now on, you'll be the fourth. The monster queen clearly didn't want to pay attention to the mutant dog, so it remained silent. It lazily basked in the sun. This made the mutant dog somewhat annoyed, and it said, do you dare to show me? The mutant dog grew larger, looking majestic. What's up, are you scared? Joshua, standing nearby, silently took out his phone to record the scene. The monster queen instantly grew larger, soon becoming a 100-meter-tall behemoth. The mutant dog, who understands, my family? I just said something and it got anxious, and it really needs to pee. Chapter 180, The Eater. Joshua's pets had been re-ranked, with a monster queen in first place. She didn't care how the others ranked, it didn't matter anyway. It wasn't like getting closer meant getting anything special. The monster queen basked in the sun in the yard, and when she had nothing else to do, she took her minions to chase away small animals like squirrels that intruded. For her, such days were pleasant, at least she didn't have to worry about the monster's future. Without the pressure, she felt a sense of relief, both physically and mentally. Click, the door opened, and a woman emerged. Her attire made it clear she was going on a long journey. It was Aunt May the monster queen, and her 3 minions approached her. She knelt down, petted the 4 little ones, and then said, let's go skiing. She had recently taken a liking to skiing, so she planned to go and return in a few days. The 4 little ones followed Aunt May. Aunt May's gone skiing. Peter checked his phone. It was a message from Aunt May. He wasn't worried about her safety. After all, she was surrounded by powerful monsters. The thought of the monster queen's 100-meter-tall mammoth filled him with fear. He might have spider powers, but that was a 100-meter-tall monster. A single slap could crush him to pulp. Even the Hulk wouldn't be able to defeat the monster queen. Aunt May loves excitement, too, said Gwen, sipping her juice. It was good to get out more often. After all, Aunt May wasn't too old. Penny called everyone over for food. She'd known Aunt May was going skiing yesterday, so she'd prepared a bunch of lunchboxes. There was enough for everyone. Peter's gaze lingered on Joshua, and he asked, so, why are you here today? Joshua would never have been with them at lunch any other day. He was here because of Penny's lunchboxes. You're asking even though you already know the answer. Does that make you feel happier? Joshua asked, opening his lunchbox. The lunchbox looked a bit childish, clearly Penny's arrangement. Ha, this lunchbox looks like something a kid made. Is Joshua's baby lunchbox tasty? Peter asked grumblingly. It's quite interesting. At least I quite like it, Joshua said. This lunchbox might seem a bit childish to Peter, but it wasn't bad for Joshua. By the way, there are so many people here today. Peter looked around at the people around him, Team Spider, White Star, and even long-haired Gwen. No one responded to Peter's words, and Peter felt a little embarrassed, so he said, at least show some reaction, eat quickly, short-haired Gwen reminded him. Oh, Peter nodded. Then he looked around. There were so many girls, Gwen, the school's sunny star with long hair, Shirahoshi, a gentle and kind new star, the incredibly handsome Gwen with short hair, Penny, a lively and quirky cute girl, and Anna, the girl every boy in school drooled over. Logically, his daily life was filled with beautiful girls, but why did he feel a little jealous? His eyes fell on Joshua, a dark-haired boy intently eating. While Joshua was certainly incredibly handsome, one couldn't just look at appearances. Inner qualities were also important. For example, he was a righteous superhero. As the saying goes, heroes deserve beauty, but why didn't he have a beauty? Peter sighed. These girls were obsessed with looks. Among the girls, Anna was also intently eating. Being half demonic, she had a big appetite. Her favorite time was eating, and in the evening. She sat on the sofa on the rooftop listening to Joshua play guitar. Anna put down her lunchbox. She had finished, but she wasn't quite full. Let's see if there's any food left. There's none left. Anna felt her stomach, feeling hungry for afternoon classes. Anyone else want to go eat? Joshua said. Saved. Anna immediately said, me. The others shook their heads. Let's go, Anna, Joshua said, standing up. He felt like he hadn't eaten yet and was about to become a glutton. Joshua and Anna left together. China. Anna and Joshua were at a hot pot restaurant. Although their place was far away, that wasn't a problem for Joshua. If he wanted, he could travel anywhere in the universe. As they ate, a man said, "That's bizarre, what's going on?" A woman and a man had sex in their marital home after getting engaged, but a few days later, the woman sued the man. She accused him of rape. Is that true? It's true. You'll see it all on the news. Let me see. He clicked in the comments section, and a variety of comments followed. This, how about it? Isn't it magical? Indeed, this makes me a little afraid of marriage. When I think about the possibility of this, I don't have any idea about women. What kind of woman do you want? You can make money from her. Making money is not illegal, but making women is not necessarily the same. Maybe you will lose both your money and your lover, or even go to jail for a few years. Tisk tisk tisk, today's society, well, it's better to make money honestly and improve your parents' lives. Yes, instead of using money to be a bootlicker, why not use it to honor your parents? I paid back a mobile phone from my mother before. That's great. By the way, you have only graduated for 2 months, right? Well, just graduated for 2 months. Let me tell you something. My mother is still worried that I can't support myself. It turns out that I have always been so weak in her mind. Maybe in her eyes you are still a child, maybe. Anna was showing off, and so was Joshua. They both ate very generously. Anna was very reserved at first, but after seeing Joshua's generous way of eating, she began to be less reserved. Look at that foreigner. Is he a reincarnated ghost? He eats so much, like a pig. Ha ha ha. A girl noticed Anna and said. Anna understood, and she lowered her head silently. Wasn't that really unjurely? Just as Anna was feeling embarrassed, Joshua had already stuffed the girl into the trash can and kicked her out of the hot pot restaurant. Silence fell. Joshua said, "If anyone's upset, come find me." The girl crawled out and said, "You?" Before she could finish her sentence, her companions covered her with their hands and prepared to spit the bullet. This was Superman. Killing them would be easy. Chapter 181 His God. After Anna finished eating, Joshua took her home. They continued studying and had a few drinks outside before heading to class. Time slipped by. In the afternoon, Joshua returned home early. He put on his helmet and went to play games. Sword Art Online. How are you enjoying this game? A tall woman asked. It might have been just a short time for Joshua, but for her, it was a long time. She looked at Joshua expectantly, hoping he would be satisfied with the game. It's great, Joshua said. The game now had guns, and the experience was even better than before. The tall woman looked at Joshua and said, It's been a long time. Yeah, Joshua nodded. For Asuna, it was indeed a long time. Let's start the game. Asuna then began to play with Joshua, and Joshua was very satisfied with the game. Furthermore, Asuna mentioned that the game was constantly updated, with new maps being added. Joshua was very satisfied, and the two of them played for a long time. When they were about to part, Joshua handed a ball of light to Asuna. This was something that could make Asuna immortal. Joshua didn't want to see Asuna buried in a few months. However, after playing for 2 days, Asuna seemed to be a little emotional. Joshua also noticed her abnormality. After thinking about it, Joshua went to her world, this time in his real body. At a banquet, Asuna was wearing a black suit and holding a wine glass. Her eyes were somewhat empty as she looked at something. Now she is already a very famous person in the industry, but what surprised people is that she seems to have always remained single. Many people pursued her, but no one succeeded. Suddenly, a black-haired young man approached and said, "You look unhappy." Asuna glanced at him and said, "Your child is going to kindergarten, right?" "Yeah, in a few months." "Aren't you planning on finding a boyfriend?" Kirito Nikazuto said. After leaving the game, he'd been dating a girl named Sachi, and they now had 2 adorable children. Asuna pursed her lips. Perhaps it was time for her to find a man too. She'd been working so hard for years, finally creating a game that would attract Joshua, but she couldn't bring herself to bring it up. She couldn't just say, "Marry me." There were some things she couldn't say. Asuna felt melancholy. Everyone around her was getting married, and she was the only one still single. Was her persistence really necessary? It was night. Asuna was walking down the street. It wasn't far from her home, so she decided to walk. After a few steps, she saw someone familiar. Asuna said, "I might not be able to play games with you today. I need to rest for a while." It was Joshua who showed up. Asuna felt like she should let go, but she still felt a little reluctant. But there was no way. There would always be times when she felt reluctant. Joshua knew what she was thinking. After all, he had used telepathy. He said, "No problem." "What?" Joshua's words left Asuna bewildered. "I mean, I can marry you. It's just in this world, after all." Asuna's eyes widened, her emotions shifting, joy surging. She hugged Joshua and said, "Are you really willing?" Of course. Joshua hugged Asuna, and her breasts grew thicker. Soon, Asuna let go, clutching Joshua's hand and heading home. It seemed like she could finally shed her virginity today. Joshua let Asuna lead him. Tonight was going to be a long night. The next morning, Asuna dismounted Joshua and laid on the bed, her chest heaving violently. She recalled the sensation she'd felt before. The feeling of soul and body merging was intoxicating. She rested for a moment before drinking some water from her cup. A slight smile rose from her lips, her body and soul now content. "Aren't you going to meet your family today?" Joshua asked, heading for the bathroom. Asuna had told him yesterday she'd take him to meet them. "Okay, let's shower together," Asuna said. After washing up, the 2 of them left. Asuna grasped Joshua's hand, interlocking their fingers. Her expression showed her joy. "Are you still in high school?" she asked. "Yes, time flows differently. In my world, only a little while has passed, so what should I do?" "I might not be able to stay with you for long," Asuna said. "It's not a big deal, actually. I just thought I could make our time flow at the same speed, so we still have plenty of time," Joshua said. The idea had come to him suddenly, and he could do it himself. "Is that so? You're truly amazing, capable of such a thing," Asuna exclaimed in surprise. "You're a god, after all. If you want, I can even take the sun down for you," Joshua said. Asuna glanced at the sun and said, "Forget it. If you take it, it'll be the end of the world." A boy, overhearing their conversation, couldn't help but laugh. How could there be such a fool, such a pathetic fool? But even such a fool had such a beautiful friend, and he. Suddenly, the boy felt even worse than a fool. So, Joshua and Asuna went to meet her family. Asuna's family was clearly displeased with Joshua. While he was handsome, good looks were useless. Despite their objections, Asuna remained resolute. "I'm not telling you this to ask for your consent. I'm simply telling you this." "Okay, bye." Asuna stood up and left, taking Joshua with her. In the end, it was Asuna's brother who chased after her. He said, "They're just worried you'll get scammed." Asuna looked at her brother and boasted, "My lover is a god." "Huh?" Asuna's brother was stunned, feeling she'd been tricked. He'd previously thought Joshua and Asuna were truly in love, but now it was clear he was a con man. He said, "You just want to cheat my sister out of her money, right?" Joshua sighed and snapped his fingers. Chapter 182 Spider-Man. With the sound of a snap of fingers, the sky and the earth suddenly lost their color, and the world was plunged into darkness. Asuna's brother couldn't help but exclaim, "Who covered my eyes?" "Joshua." "Asuna." A star was born in Joshua's hand, its light illuminating the surroundings. Asuna's brother was silent for a long time before saying, "So you really are a god?" Joshua nodded and restored the world to normal. He said, "Barely a god, right, as long as it wasn't too outrageous, he could do it." Asuna's brother looked at Joshua and said, "I believe you, There was no way he couldn't believe it. After all, Joshua's methods were too outrageous. Seeing that her brother believed her, Asuna said, "Brother, he just wants to be an ordinary person in this world, so please don't tell anyone else." Asuna felt that as long as her brother knew, it would be fine, otherwise others would do something stupid. "No problem," Asuna's brother nodded. "Then goodbye, brother." Asuna left with Joshua. Joshua and Asuna were walking down the street. Both were incredibly handsome, turning heads. While shopping, Asuna encountered a woman choosing clothes. Her eyes immediately lit up, and she quickly walked over and tapped the woman on the shoulder. "What?" The woman was visibly startled. Once she saw it was Asuna, she said, somewhat angrily, "Asuna, what are you doing?" Sorry, Asuna apologized, but she'd do it again. Asada Ashino's gaze fell on Joshua, the young man who had been watching them. She whispered in Asuna's ear, "Look, there's a handsome young man watching us. How about we go tease him?" Asuna pulled away, touched her ear, and said, "That's too close. Isn't that what I always do?" Asada Ashino said, oblivious to Asuna's complaint. After all, they had even slept together frequently at the company. Her relationship with Asada Ashino goes back a long time. Kazuto Kiritani introduced her to a game, and she tried it, eventually meeting Asada Ashino. They became friends. Asuna even saved her from being assaulted. They became close friends. Very close friends, but she was concerned that Shino didn't seem to be interested in men. Asuna said, "Go and give it a try." Asada Shino naturally refused to go. She shook her head and said, "Forget it. He looks like a high school student." It's a crime. Asuna knew it. Shino was just good at talking. Asuna pulled Asada Shino over to Joshua. Asada Shino was confused. What was he doing? "Asuka, are you this horny?" "She's my good friend. Her name is Asada Ashino. The gun design was assigned to her," Asuna said. "Asada Ashino?" So they were friends? And they seemed to be pretty close. Joshua extended his hand and said, "Hello, my name is Joshua Parker." Asada Ashino was reluctant to shake hands, but after all, they were Asuna's friends. She held out her hand, ready to shake. But Joshua had already withdrawn it. "Asuna, Asada Ashino, don't force yourself. I can tell you don't want to shake my hand," Joshua said bluntly. Although he wasn't reading Asada's mind, he still caught the subtle expression on Asada Shino's face. "By the way, Shino doesn't really like men," Asuna said. "It was her mistake." Asada Shino smiled and said, "Because of something, I'm wary of men. Please forgive me." "Yeah," Joshua nodded. Asada Shino's smile looked forced. Asuna said, "Let's go play together," but she regretted it the moment she said it. Asada Shino clearly didn't like being around boys. She looked at Asada Shino, about to say something, but she spoke first. "Sure, but I think I've seen you somewhere." "Oh, and there's a picture of Asuna's room." No wonder he looked familiar, but after all these years, why hadn't he changed at all? It was as if time hadn't changed him. Joshua glanced at Asuna, who looked away, somewhat embarrassed, and said, "Why are you looking at me?" Joshua then played with them for a long time. After saying goodbye to them, he left. Saturday. Joshua said goodbye to his family and traveled through time. What would he encounter this time? Earth. This time, Joshua appeared directly on Earth, but it wasn't what he'd imagined. A woman was chattering on the big screen, calling Spider-Woman a pest and spouting all sorts of anti-Spider-Woman rhetoric. "Can you explain why you appeared through an orange tunnel? Are you from a parallel universe? Wow, it feels like something out of a comic book," a young woman's voice chimed in. Joshua turned around and saw a Spider-Man, or rather, a female Spider-Man. She had breasts and a tall build, but she wasn't Spider-Woman, but a female version of Peter Parker. "If you don't say anything, I'll send you to SHIELD, and Nicole will be very interested," Spider-Woman said. "Hello, Spider-Woman, my name is Joshua Parker. In another world, I'm your cousin," Joshua said. He knew a little about this Spider-Woman. In an animated series, Ultimate Spider-Man had visited this universe and fought against the Green Goblin, a very powerful Green Goblin, with a Spider-Woman. "Obviously, I don't believe you just because of that, but I can let you stay at my house for a few days. Of course, I'll keep an eye on you." Spider-Woman and Ultimate Spider-Man had similar personalities, both being rather disobedient. She figured if Joshua was just here for fun, there was no need to tell Nicole. "No problem. Your name is Pat, right?" "Yes, That's right, Spider-Woman said. Suddenly, a violent explosion occurred, and Spider-Woman said, I have to go. Joshua followed and soon encountered his first opponent, Kraven the Hunter, but she was a female. She looked at Spider-Woman and said, the annoying bugs are here again. Spider-Woman rushed forward to fight with a female Kraven the Hunter. It must be said that this Spider-Woman is very strong. She was able to perfectly suppress Kraven the Hunter by herself. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Tora plays very colorfully. Spider-Woman quickly dispatched the female version of Kraven the Hunter, though the surrounding area was left with a bit of damage. A woman chattered on the big screen, I knew she was a pest. Look how much she's destroyed, Spider-Woman sighed, then spread her hands at Joshua, saying, that's just the way she is. Such a nuisance, wait a minute, don't even think about running away. She quietly placed a tracking device on Joshua. Pretty cautious, Joshua muttered as he removed it. Spider-Woman must have made it herself, she was quite clever, after all. A few minutes later, a girl appeared, she looked quite cute. Joshua, are you okay? Pat asked. Not bad. Seeing you always feels strange, Joshua said. After all, you were facing the male version of me before. But, how can I put it? I didn't expect there was a male version of me. It's incredible, Pat said. In this world, men are weak. Pat pulled out her phone, fiddling with something. After a moment, she said, I've created a new identity for you, one you can live in this world with, but don't get into trouble. She couldn't skip school for Joshua, so to keep an eye on him, she planned to take him to class with her. This way, she'd avoid any trouble. That afternoon, Joshua saw Pat being stuffed into a closet by a blonde woman in the hallway. Well, it went without saying it was Flash Thompson. Joshua opened the door and looked at Pat. You two? I thought you beat him up. After all, I'm just an ordinary girl now, Pat said. She was concerned about the otherworldly version of herself, but perhaps she was in the same situation, otherwise why would Joshua sigh so deeply? Of course, he could be fooling her. But just keeping an eye on him was all that mattered. Joshua and Pat then went to see the teacher. Pat had already taken care of the enrollment arrangements, so Joshua only needed to let her know. During class, the teacher took Joshua to class and introduced him. The students were quite enthusiastic. After class, Pat left the classroom, and Joshua followed her. Pat changed in a small alley, saying, it's not nice to watch girls change. She only needed to take off her outer clothes, she wore her spider suit underneath. Joshua landed slowly and said, you don't have much to see, but I'm still interested in your daily life, so I'll follow you. Pat shook her head and said, you'll be discovered by SHIELD, so you shouldn't follow me. She looked at Joshua and said, do you know what SHIELD is? I do, but don't worry, because I can turn invisible, like this. Joshua's figure gradually faded. What a cool power, Pat said with a hint of envy. Pat agreed to let Joshua stay with her, but she still reminded him to be careful, as her daily life was quite dangerous, either getting into fights or on the verge of a fight. After that, Pat began her mission. Her daily routine was truly remarkable. After beating off the Green Goblin, she fought Dr. Octopus, and then Dr. Lizard. It was truly a difficult task for her. It was night. Pat, her feet pressed against the glass of a tall building, her back leaning against it, looked up at the moon and said, I'm so tired today. Joshua, are you still there? I am. Joshua's figure appeared, floating. I'm so envious. Flying is a great ability, Pat said. She couldn't fly, so she envied those who could. Not bad, Joshua said. Pat asked, are you a superhero? Not really, Joshua said. He never considered himself a superhero. By the way, we're organizing a special team. Do you want to join? Pat asked. Joshua looked at Spider-Woman. In some ways, she was indeed Peter. Never mind. I'm not planning on joining you, and I'll probably be back soon, Joshua said. Well, you're not from this world after all, Pat said. After a meal, the two went to Pat's house. Joshua, of course, went in stealthily. They stared at each other in Pat's room. Pat said, I want you to sleep in the bed, but I can't sleep without it. It's okay, Joshua said. The room was filled with some girly things, all pink and tender, unlike Peter's. Pat and Joshua chatted for a long time. Then, checking the time, she said, "Time for bed." Good night, Joshua said. Pat closed her eyes. She was still awake. It was unbelievable that she had brought a boy home. Surprisingly, she wasn't particularly interested in him, in the sense of being interested in a relationship. It was quite strange. Pat slowly fell asleep. Joshua, of course, wouldn't sleep. He left to meet other superheroes. For example, this world's Iron Man was a beautiful blonde, also known for her philandering, and a ruthless character who was known for her sexuality. Joshua was at a party, a female Tony Stark enjoying the services of a muscular man. A handsome man was massaging her legs. What a good life. She noticed Joshua and waved. The handsome men surrounding her dispersed. She took out her lipstick and applied it. Perfect. She walked up to Joshua and said, "Handsome, I have plenty of time tonight. Interested in chatting with me?" Joshua, the blonde beauty before him, was beautiful, but the thought of her being Tony Stark made him want to laugh. He thought, "Let's record this and show Tony later." Tony Stark lifted Joshua's chin and said, "You're such a gem." Joshua said, "You're so funny." Tony smiled and said, "I've always been funny." Joshua was a gem, so naturally, she wasn't going to let him go. After a while, Tony left, looking a little annoyed. No matter what she said, she couldn't take Joshua away, which made her a little annoyed. "Humph, I have plenty of money, I can find any man I want. You'll regret it if you don't let yourself get on." As soon as Tony walked out, she hooked her finger at an extremely handsome man. The man immediately came over. Tony, wearing sunglasses, looked back at Joshua, as if to say, "She has plenty of men." Chapter 184. Is it okay for me to rob you? "I have to go," Joshua said to Pat. He'd been here for 2 days and had seen a lot, not least the extravagant play of Captain America and Tony Stark in this world. Pat didn't try to stop him. She said, "Goodbye." "Yeah." Joshua opened the portal and left. Pat sighed, then said, "I'll miss you. After all, you're my friend." Returning to his own universe, Joshua went to find Tony Stark. "So, what's up?" Tony Stark was studying his new suit, which was constantly being upgraded. Of course, this was thanks to the technology Joshua had brought him. Without it, he probably wouldn't have been able to upgrade so quickly. "I have something good to show you." Joshua played the video he'd prepared. "What's this?" "Brand new technology," Tony Stark couldn't help but exclaim, quite excited. But the next second, the screen appeared, a mature, blonde, blue-eyed woman who looked like a master flirter, surrounded by men. "What's this?" Tony Stark was still confused. The next moment, the Iron Man suit appeared before the blonde woman. It was very similar to his, except it was a female version. Tony Stark was a clever man, so he said, "Is this another me?" The personality seemed similar. He liked women, and the female version of him liked men. "I didn't expect there was a female version of me. It seems the universe is more interesting than I imagined." Tony Stark was even more amused, but he was more concerned about Joshua's abilities. He wouldn't rashly venture into other universes without certainty. "Want something to eat?" Tony asked after taking a look. They were already preparing to eat. "Yes," Joshua nodded. Soon, Banner arrived with the food. Joshua took a look and saw it was delicious, even with dessert. This meal was bound to be expensive. "Hi, Joshua," Dr. Banner said. "Hello, Dr. Banner," Joshua said. The three of them then began to eat. During the meal, Tony Stark asked some technical questions. Joshua explained them to Tony Stark as he ate. "Hey, boys, do you need a drink?" A blonde woman walked in. It was Pepper Potts, one of Tony Stark's most capable assistants. "Thank you." Tony Stark kissed her. Banner whispered to Joshua, "He's interested in her, I can tell," Joshua said, then ate a little. "Hello, Mr. Parker," Pepper Potts said, knowing that Joshua had a good relationship with Tony. "Hello," Joshua said. Banner, Joshua, and Tony continued to discuss their ideas. The meal took a long time, and both Banner and Tony had benefited greatly. He wiped his hands and said, "I have so many ideas right now. I have to get to work." Tony Stark took out a bottle of medicine and swallowed it. It was a very effective medicine that could relieve fatigue and even allow people to go days and nights without rest, and it was harmless. He and Banner had created this medicine with some advice from Joshua. Joshua then went home, but it seemed empty. Shirahoshi had returned to his own world, and the others had their own things to do. Aunt May was still out playing. Joshua sat for a moment and began playing games. He put on his helmet and quickly selected a world at random. Daoki Continent. Joshua, stroking his chin, sat on a wooden building and looked down at the people below. There was a storyteller, recounting various events. For example, how the Yunlin young princess broke off her engagement. This was undoubtedly the world of Daopo Kang. As for the broken engagement, it happened a few days ago. Leveling up? This was like playing an ancient game. It felt like an unprecedented experience. Joshua spread his hands, and a small cyclone appeared. His was wind. Actually, he'd previously been fire, but he'd switched to wind because he loved speed. It was like playing a speed hero, pulling away a little and then turning back to taunt. He played like that often, playing with his mentality, a happy wind man. After understanding the mechanics of this world, Joshua perfectly developed a set of skills, one of the world's most advanced and logical. This skill greatly increased speed. Now, dressed in plain clothes, he looked like a handsome young man. Alright, you need a weapon. Without a weapon, you wouldn't be a swordsman. Joshua fiddled with it for a while and made a wooden sword. With a wooden sword on his back, he looked like a swordsman no matter how you looked at him. Okay, now it's time to kill people and steal treasures. Let me see who is so blind. Joshua walked confidently on the street for a long time. No one is bothering me at all. Why are there so many conflicts in novels, but I never encounter any? Maybe it's because the security in the city is good. He left the city and walked on the path. Suddenly, he felt someone following him. Is the good guy finally coming? Just then, Joshua heard someone say, "This kid is wearing a cloth shirt and carrying a wooden sword. He looks like a poor guy. He probably doesn't have any money on him. It's better not to rob him." It's a waste of time, Joshua, you can actually analyze it? Okay, if you don't rob me, then I'll rob you guys, okay? Joshua drew his wooden sword, leaped in front of the group, and declared, "Robbery." The group that had been following Joshua was stunned. They weren't going to rob him, yet he'd robbed them anyway. Are all young people these days so reckless? The leader shouted, "Kill him." Joshua grasped the wooden sword, the wind whipping the hem of his clothes, and for a moment, he felt lighter. Just then, a man rushed over. Joshua easily dodged the attack and swung his wooden sword. It easily sliced a man's chest, and blood splattered instantly. Seeing this, the others rushed towards Joshua. Instead of retreating, Joshua advanced. His speed was incredible. He quickly dispatched the robbers, and then came the familiar corpse-searching part. Well, these guys had nothing but a few coins. Joshua took the money and left. As he walked a little further, he casually swung his sword. The cyan wind transformed into thousands of sharp blades, engulfing the robbers. Chapter 185 Unbearable. Damn it, a young man slammed his fist on the table, the veins near his temple throbbing with fury. Brother, calm down. That brat won't show up again, or we'll kill him, said a young man in green and red, looking rather showy. Not long ago, they had encountered a young man with black hair and a wooden sword. They had initially been collaborating on a treasure hunt, but then, seeing the boy's clumsiness, they decided to kill him and steal his possessions. However, he was incredibly fast, making him impossible to catch. Later, in the forest, he frequently attracted monsters to attack them. After finally escaping the forest, he toyed with them again, stealing their treasures and constantly lingering in front of them, taunting them. Damn, they were pissed off. After all, they were all 3-star fighters. Damn bastard. Kingshan Town? Joshua rubbed his chin and walked in, unsure if he'd run into Little Medical Immortal. Perhaps they just shared the same name. Suddenly, Joshua spotted 2 familiar figures, who also spotted him. Their eyes instantly turned bloodshot, and they stood up. One of them shouted, "How dare you show up in front of me?" Then, he rushed out. Their fighting spirit surged, their aura terrifying. It was them. They tried to kill him, but he was so fast they'd been left to fend for themselves. Then, he taunted them endlessly, their spirits shattered by Joshua's torture. Seriously, Joshua had had enough. So, let him die. Joshua unsheathed his wooden sword, a cyan wind swirling around him. With a casual swing, the cyan wind transformed into a sharp blade and lashed out. The man was horrified. He'd only known Joshua for his speed, but now it seemed he had a powerful attack. Petrification. This was a very low-level fighting technique. His body was covered in a layer of grayish-white armor. But Joshua's wind blade was incredibly sharp, piercing the armor in an instant, killing the man. The man was reduced to a bloody mess, and everyone distanced themselves. Big Brother, the young man in red, was furious, but he knew he was no match for him and had to flee. But then he suddenly wondered if he could really escape. Joshua looked at the young man in red and said, "Clean up your big brother," then he left. The young man gritted his teeth and said, "You're going to die a miserable death." Joshua curled his lips. They had been the ones to attack him first, but now he was being made the villain. But he didn't care. He casually swung his wooden sword. The wind blade he unleashed instantly chopped the young man in red into pieces. Then he tossed a sum of money to the young man. "Clean up this place," Joshua said, and left. "Would you like to be my bodyguard?" a girl asked. She was going to the mountains to collect herbs. Joshua had become quite famous recently, known for his incredible speed, making him invulnerable to all manner of monsters. So she sought him out. It was a quest. You had to take on quests to play games, of course. Joshua nodded and said, "Okay." They set a time for the next morning, and Joshua began wandering around. Time quickly arrived the next day. Joshua, clutching his wooden sword, said, "Just the two of us." The girl nodded, then said, "I'm not a weakling, so the two of us are enough." "Whatever." Joshua nodded, and the two of them set off. The girl said she was the little medical fairy. Joshua's expression was a little strange. Is this world really that small? Even something like this could happen. The two soon arrived in a forest. Little medical fairy pressed a veil into Joshua's hands and said, "This is an anti-poison item. Wear it. I'll release some poison next. That way, ordinary monsters won't bother us." Joshua silently put on the veil, which had a faint fragrance. As they advanced through the forest, they soon found a medicinal herb, but it was guarded by a poisonous spider. It was a bit tricky to get. Little medical fairy said, "This spider is extremely poisonous, but the herb around it can detoxify it, and it's very expensive. Are you sure you can find it?" "Yes, I'll kill it." Joshua drew his wooden sword and swaggered out. Little medical fairy was a little surprised, but could only chalk it up to Joshua's skill and courage. She hoped he wasn't some fool. The giant spider spotted Joshua and roared as it lunged at him, eager to take a bite of food that was brought to its doorstep. The wooden sword swung casually, and in an instant, the wind caught a massive blade, piercing the giant spider and tearing it apart. He was about the same level as the giant spider. He wasn't practicing the same technique, but it was the most advanced and most suitable for him. Naturally, he could kill it instantly with a single strike. How impressive! Little medical fairy was surprised. This young man was indeed very powerful. No wonder he dared to walk so brazenly. She walked over and collected the herbs. Then she said, "This giant spider is worth a lot of money. I'll take care of it. You can sell it to someone else later." "Of course, I'd be happy to take it," Joshua nodded. The two continued on their way. Night soon fell. Little medical fairy didn't build a fire. She and Joshua sat in a tree, gazing at the beautiful night sky. Little medical fairy said, "You're so powerful, you must be a disciple of a major sect. Why did you come to such a remote place like this?" "No, I'm not a member of a sect, but I plan to travel the world," Joshua said. Little medical fairy, she glanced at Joshua. Travel the world. She thought of her own poisonous body, which was extremely deadly and would even backfire on her. She had always wanted to solve it, but there was no good way. If she followed him, would she be able to find a way to solve her troubles? She should make a long-term plan first. Early in the morning, Joshua had just woken up when he found that Xiao Yixin had disappeared. Could this guy have been attacked? He began to search for her by following the scent on Xiao Yixin's body and soon found her. But she was taking a shower. Their eyes met. Xiao Yixin screamed. Joshua turned his back to Xiao Yixin and said, "Can't you tell me you were taking a shower? I fucking thought you were captured by a monster and made his wife." Xiao Yixin didn't know what to say for a moment. She was obviously the one who was seen naked, but why was he blaming her? She said as she put on her clothes, "I saw you were sleeping soundly so I didn't disturb you." Chapter 186. How did you survive until now? Xiao Yixin put on her clothes and pretended nothing had happened. They both pretended nothing had happened. Xiao Yixin took out some food and said, "Let's eat before we continue." Joshua watched as Xiao Yixin pulled various items from her storage ring. He had previously studied storage rings, a type of space ring, and now he could create one. This must be considered a technological advancement in the world of cultivation, quite interesting. Xiao Yixin quickly prepared the food and invited Joshua to join them. Joshua tasted a little and found it quite tasty. He didn't know what kind of creature the meat was, but it tasted very refreshing. Seeing that Joshua seemed satisfied, Xiao Yixin said, "Eat more. We have a long way to go." "Yes," Joshua said, devouring the food without hesitation. Just as they were eating, someone arrived. They looked to be two mercenaries, both fighter-level mercenaries. As they arrived, they spotted Xiao Yixin. Xiao Yixin was already stunningly beautiful, and they couldn't take their eyes off her. This is a desolate mountainous area. Most mercenaries are lawless. When they discovered Joshua and Xiao Yixin were alone, their first thought was to kill Joshua and take Xiao Yixin's place. "Hey, didn't the two masters tell you not to leave without permission?" a bald mercenary said, his eyes fixed on Xiao Yixin's graceful figure. "If I rip her clothes," he licked his lips. Another mercenary, knife-wielding, approached Joshua. Xiao Yixin whispered in Joshua's ear, "These two are up to no good. Be careful." Joshua, knowing their intentions, stood up and drew his wooden sword. "Wooden sword? You're just a brat," the knife-wielding youth lunged at Joshua, his speed considerable. His broadsword whistled as it slashed towards him. "You're too slow." Joshua nimbly dodged the blow, then aimed his wooden sword straight at the youth's head. The youth watched the wooden sword rapidly magnify in his eyes. Danger. He sensed danger, but was too slow. Joshua's wooden sword sliced off the young man's head. "How is that possible?" The bald mercenary's eyes widened. His brother was so weak? He had to run, and he turned and ran. After all, his strength was inferior to the young man's. Little medical fairy watched from the side and had to admit that Joshua's killing was truly clean and efficient. It was obvious he'd killed many people. But then she also noticed Joshua's mischievousness. He used his ghostly speed to toy with the bald mercenary. This infuriated the bald mercenary. Finally, he gave up running. He said, "Kill me." Joshua shook his head. The bald mercenary committed suicide. "Joshua," Little Medical Fairy said, "don't torture me." Joshua said nothing. The situation just now was like when he was playing Yasuo and was next to a health AD carry, and then the AD carry just gave up the tower. The two continued on their way. They collected a lot along the way, but Joshua felt a little bored. After completing this mission, they went home. "It's been 7 days, Xiao Yixin said, sitting on a rock with her feet in the water. After getting to know Joshua over the past few days, she'd come to believe he was a sick person, someone who loved to have fun. However, his strength was still formidable, and his talent was incredibly strong. He'd advanced from a 1-star fighter to a 7-star fighter in just 7 days, even without the aid of elixirs. His talent was truly incredible. With his handsomeness and talent, he must be very popular, right? But that had nothing to do with her. She'd been having a wonderful time these past few days. Suddenly, Joshua dove into the water to catch a fish. A few minutes later, the water exploded, and a massive fish monster emerged with Joshua on its back. It was raining down here. Xiao Yixin, she exchanged a few words with Joshua before changing. She then hung up her clothes, including her underwear, to dry. As expected, Joshua said, appearing behind Xiao Yixin without her noticing. Little Medical Fairy, feeling somewhat embarrassed, said, "What are you, a grown man, doing looking at girls' underwear?" Then Joshua recommended modern underwear to Little Medical Fairy. Little Medical Fairy was stunned. How could a grown man even know about these things? But she wasn't going to use them. Knowing that Little Medical Fairy was still quite conservative, Joshua continued his recommendations, including sanitary pads. Little Medical Fairy was shocked. How could a man know so much about these things than a girl? Following Joshua's recommendation, she tried sanitary pads. They worked well. "I think you could make money with this," Little Medical Fairy said. She saw a path to wealth. "I'm not short of money," Joshua said, then began to process the strange fish's flesh. Little Medical Fairy felt more and more that Joshua was a little strange. She asked, "Aren't you ashamed of touching women's things?" "No," Joshua said. Little Medical Fairy couldn't help but exclaim, "You're truly strange, a strange man. Life is so short, so what's wrong with being a little strange?" Joshua said. Of course, this refers to ordinary people. He was now practically eternal. Afternoon. Little medical fairy looked at Joshua's face, so close to her, and said, "Why did you go and provoke a swarm of bees?" She was helpless. She could have just walked around it, but Joshua said he hadn't poked her hive yet, so she went and poked the bee's nest. Now they had to run. The bees weren't as fast as Joshua, which made her feel a little relieved. But then Joshua suddenly stopped, turned around, looked at the bees about to leave, and said, "Hey, silly bees." The bees had a certain intelligence, so after hearing this, they resumed their pursuit of Joshua. "Little medical fairy," she began to ask, "how did you survive this long?" "That's just how it is." After a long moment, little medical fairy stepped out of Joshua's arms. She had been bouncing around in his arms for so long that she felt uncomfortable. She needed to take a shower. "I'll go," Joshua waved, saying, "Go ahead." Little medical fairy quickly walked to the water's edge, took off her clothes, and stepped into the water. Her parched body instantly cooled. She felt Joshua had done it on purpose, but she had no proof. Soon she emerged from the water and returned to where she had parted with Joshua, but he was nowhere to be seen. Her thoughts raced. What had he done? Was he murdered? Or had he abandoned her? It seemed unlikely, but considering Joshua's character, he'd probably leave if he found himself bored. Suddenly, Joshua returned, bringing with him some fruit. Chapter 187 Miracle. In the middle of the night, Zio Yixin was awakened by a strange noise. She rubbed her eyes and looked towards the source. Joshua was fiddling with something. It was a bit noisy, so she asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm making a gun," Joshua said. He thought it would be fun to draw his gun and fire when his opponent thought he was going to use a sword. Just as Joshua was delighted, Zio Yixin said, "That's noisy. I need to sleep." Upon hearing this, Joshua left. When the noise faded, Zio Yixin fell asleep again. In the morning, Zio Yixin woke up, rubbed her eyes, and went to the river to wash. She noticed Joshua was resting with his eyes closed. She began to wash, using the tools Joshua had given her, which worked very well. As she brushed her teeth, she said, "What a nice day today." "Yeah." Joshua opened his eyes. It was indeed a nice day today. After Zio Yixin finished washing up, she said, "Let's go. We still have quite a bit of travel to do today." "Yes," Joshua said calmly. His gaze fell on Zio Yixin's face. Water droplets clung to her hair, making her fair, tender skin look especially dewy and radiant. She was a beauty. Joshua's gaze made Zio Yixin feel a little uneasy. She said, "It's not nice to stare at a girl." Joshua looked away and said, "How long will it take to complete this mission?" Zio Yixin thought for a moment and said, "About a month." Joshua, "So long." After advancing for a few kilometers, they encountered a giant lion. It looked at Joshua and Zio Yixin and roared, perhaps mistaking them for intruders. Zio Yixin said, "Everything on this guy is quite valuable." Zio Yixin's subtext was to kill him and exchange it for money. Joshua pondered for a moment, thinking that the American AI was more fun to use on humans, not wild beasts. He drew his wooden sword. But just as he was about to attack, a group suddenly appeared, led by a tall man who had brutally killed a giant lion. Zio Yixin approached Joshua, sensing these men were not good people. To prevent them from attacking her and Joshua, she quietly released a toxin. "This is our prey," the leading man said. "Oh," Joshua said, observing the men as they quietly surrounded them, apparently looking for trouble. Well, Joshua didn't mind these people trying to stir up trouble. Zio Yixin lowered her voice and said, "There are 13 of us." Zio Yixin was ready for a confrontation. Joshua was already excited. It was finally time to use the American AI. The young man in the lead said, "The girl next to you is beautiful. How about we have some fun? I promise we'll pay you enough." Zio Yixin's expression changed slightly, and she silently accelerated the release of the toxin. Just based on the man's words, she wanted to kill him. Joshua drew his wooden sword, his free hand silently reaching for his gun. The leading man suddenly broke into a sinister grin. He declared, "We've all been holding back for days, and now we finally have a solution." He charged toward Joshua. The next second, gunshot rang out, and the man's head exploded instantly. Joshua was pleased with the result. Looking around, the others were also bewildered, confused as to why their leaders had been blown off so suddenly. But they now understood that if they didn't kill Joshua, they would be the ones to die. They rushed toward Joshua and the little medical fairy. But soon, they began to wail. The poison released by the little medical fairy had taken effect, and everyone was in agony. The little medical fairy handed Joshua a pill and said, "Take it." Joshua took the pill and swallowed it. It hurts." The little medical fairy dragged Joshua away. "Don't look back," she said. Joshua hadn't intended to turn back, but her words piqued his curiosity. He turned back and saw the men gradually dissolving into a pool of blood. It was a horrifying sight, but for Joshua, it was nothing. Little medical fairy pursed her lips and said, "Disgusting, isn't it?" Her image was probably ruined. She had originally intended to maintain a beautiful young woman in front of Joshua, but now she had transformed into a poisonous woman. He would probably find it disgusting. "Not bad," Joshua said. He didn't find it particularly disgusting, but he was beginning to be intrigued by little medical fairy's toxic body. "How about studying it?" After a moment's thought, he said, "Little medical fairy, I'm actually a physician. I can sense that you're different from the average person." Joshua's words made little medical fairy's heart tighten. Sensing little medical fairy's nervousness, Joshua said, "I can help you." "How?" little medical fairy said. "We'll know after studying it. It'll be done quickly." Joshua then summoned the giant. Little medical fairy pursed her lips and said, "I'm also a physician, but I sense that you know nothing about medicine." "You'll understand soon," Joshua said, and the giant descended completely. The little medical fairy watched Joshua tinkering on a strange steel platform not far away. It looked like he was researching, but she couldn't understand what he was doing. And his things didn't seem to belong to this world. Who was he? Joshua quickly completed his research, generating impressive results. Logically, her growth potential was high, but her body wouldn't be able to handle it over time. There were many solutions, like regularly improving her physical fitness or removing the toxins from her system. Joshua felt like another version of himself, someone who could become stronger through the use of poison. Wasn't that a different kind of superhuman? Joshua waved at the little medical fairy and said, "Come here." The little medical fairy approached Joshua and said, "Do you have any ideas?" "Yes, I'll give you this injection." Before the little medical fairy could react, Joshua injected her with a special serum. Joshua said, "This serum will cause some changes in your body." "What changes will they be?" Your body will become stronger. It will absorb the special fighting spirit within you and become stronger. This way, you won't explode like a poison gas bomb," Joshua said. Little medical fairy felt her body changing. The color of her eyes began to change, and even her nails grew longer and sharper. Joshua said, "Congratulations on becoming another Superman, or rather, a poison Superman. You have unlimited potential for growth." Little medical fairy pressed her hand to the ground, and instantly the ground began to be infected with poison. "This is incredibly powerful," Joshua said, squatting down and touching the poison ground. "It's quite interesting," he said. "This poison has prevented plant life from growing on the ground for decades." Little medical fairy retracted the released poison, allowing the ground to regain its vitality. Little medical fairy's appearance gradually changed, quickly returning to her previous state. Her nails were no longer sharp. She exclaimed, "What a miracle!" The toxic body had been plaguing her for a long time, but Joshua had so easily resolved it, even making her even stronger. Yet, Joshua put the things away and saved the information about the evil poison body. Chapter 188 Stark's paranoid ambition. "It's time to say goodbye," Joshua said, resting his head on his pillow. Little Dr. Fairy's mission was complete, and next he should go to the dock to get some fries. These past few days have been pretty good, with quite a few interesting things happening. Little Dr. Fairy looked at Joshua and said, "I'll look for you next time." "Yes," Joshua nodded, "but only if he can find him." Joshua waved and left, and Little Dr. Fairy did the same. Joshua sat on the sofa, eating fries for a while. Soon, Penny came in and said, "Joshua." She plopped down next to Joshua and took a few fries with her fingers. Crunch, crunch, the sound of chewing fries filled the air. Joshua took out his phone and checked it. Penny huddled next to him and said, "There's nothing interesting in the news lately." "Yeah, not much," Joshua said. There hadn't been anything interesting lately, but of course, it could be that he just hadn't seen anything. Then people started returning. Feet. Short-haired Gwen patted Joshua's feet. There was almost no room left. Joshua looked at Penny, huddled next to him, Anna leaning against the sofa, and Gwen, who asked him to curl his feet up a bit. Wasn't it a bit too crowded? They all watched TV. The next few days were relatively peaceful. Joshua would visit Asuna after his afternoon classes. Even supervillains weren't out much these days. Saturday had arrived again. As usual, he set off. He boarded a spaceship and traveled to an unknown universe. He didn't know what kind of universe it was, but he hoped it would be interesting. This time, he landed directly on Earth. He stepped out of the spaceship, surrounded by empty farmland. He landed on the ground, and the spaceship quickly shrank. Joshua grabbed it and stuffed it into his trouser pocket. To ensure the rest of the journey was fresh, he only activated his senses enough to sense his surroundings. He looked around and saw a wooden house not far away. He didn't head toward the cabin. He turned and prepared to leave, but after only a few steps, he heard a noise. Someone was approaching at breakneck speed, moving incredibly fast, clearly exceeding the speed of an ordinary person. Suddenly, someone burst out of the cornfield. Leading the way was Captain America, dressed in a white shirt and jeans, holding a shield. "Who are you?" Captain America asked. Joshua had no numbers on his body, clearly not from this place. "Steve," a woman emerged. It was Natasha, wearing a floral dress that looked quite nice. Her eyes fell on Joshua. "Why didn't he have a number?" "Who are you?" Natasha asked. Ever since Stark took over the world, everyone had a number on their body, and since he didn't, it was clear he wasn't from this world. "Me," Joshua said. "I'm just a passing Superman." Hearing this, Natasha said, "You'd better get out of here, or you'll be in danger." "Danger? What kind of danger could it be?" Joshua glanced at Natasha and Steve. They were clearly in no danger, and neither seemed particularly worried. He assumed the danger was directed at him. Joshua instantly analyzed numerous scenarios. There were too many possibilities. "What danger?" Joshua asked. Natasha was about to say something when a loud roar echoed. "Run!" Captain America roared, lashing out with his shield. Joshua looked in the direction of the roar and saw a steel robot, its arm severed by the shield. "Natasha, take him away," Captain America shouted. The shield arced through the air before returning to his hand. The steel robot fell, its voice emitting. "Steve Rogers, everyone needs numbers. Hand him over," the robot said. "Wear the data and be oppressed." Captain America broke into a run. The robot raised its hand and unleashed a missile. Captain America deftly dodged the missile and slammed the edge of his shield into the robot, slicing its head open. Its electronic eyes went dark. "We have to leave here, or the robot army will descend." He quickly left. Natasha led Joshua into an underground base. He looked at the many people, some of whom were from SHIELD as they walked. Natasha said, "You must be surprised, right? One thing." "What happened?" Natasha gathered her words and said, "Someone here has built a massive robot army. They've already taken over most of the United States, and they'll gradually expand." "Is this Tony Stark?" Joshua asked, somewhat puzzled. The robots clearly had the same technology as Stark's Iron Man suit, even looking similar. Natasha looked at Joshua and said, "Yes, it's Stark. He's been possessed. While studying the gem's power, he's been transformed and become dangerous," Natasha explained, and Joshua figured out what had happened. It turned out that Stark had been gradually influenced by the gem while studying it, gradually becoming a madman with a mad, paranoid mind. Down there, Joshua looked at many people, including Spider-Man. Even Hawkeye was there, along with several other heroes. The leader here is Nick Fury. Noticing Natasha and Joshua, he quickly approached and said, "Hello, my name is Nick Fury." "Hello," Joshua said. Nick Fury continued, "The fact that you don't have a number on your body means you're also a member of the Resistance, fighting against Stark. The entire world is currently resisting Stark's robot army, but it's clear the Resistance won't last long. After all, only superheroes or supervillains can defeat the Iron Robots. However, Stark's Iron Robots are evolving rapidly, becoming increasingly powerful each time. It won't be long before they are annihilated by Stark. Therefore, they must defeat him quickly, or there will be no chance later." "Oh, is that so?" Joshua rubbed his chin and said, "I'm just an ordinary person." Nick Fury looked at Joshua seriously and said, "This is a critical moment for humanity's survival." He seemed to be about to say something else, but he kept it to himself. He then turned and left. Chapter 189 Stark wants to control the world. "Who's that?" Stark looked at the scene before him. It showed Joshua, Captain America, and the others. He hoped Joshua wouldn't be a big problem. He also needed to upgrade the Iron Robot army. Every battle made it a little stronger. So he wasn't in a hurry to kill these rebels. After all, he still needed them to obtain data. He would rule the world. Stark began the upgrade. Underground base. Natasha prepared food for Joshua and said, "Here you go." "Thank you." Joshua took a bite. It didn't taste very good, so he decided not to eat. After all, he didn't like it, so why torture himself? Natasha asked, "Don't you like it?" "Actually, I don't need to eat." He wasn't lying. He wouldn't starve to death even if he didn't eat now. He wouldn't even feel hungry. Natasha took Joshua's plate and said, "We need to save food now." Then she began to eat. The food wasn't gourmet, but it was good enough. At least it was edible. She had eaten all kinds of food to survive, and now her conditions were good. As they ate, Natasha said, "If you're smart enough or strong enough, you'll have even greater power. Right now, they desperately need talent that can help them." Joshua thought for a moment and said, I'm a good shot." Hearing this, Natasha paused and said, "Then I'll train you. I'll turn you into a warrior." Training Joshua to be a warrior was fine. "No," Joshua said. "Please. He's here for tourism, and now Natasha wants him to undergo rigorous training. Isn't that strange? Tourists shouldn't be subjected to such harsh training." "What?" Natasha looked at Joshua in confusion. "I said, I won't accept training." Joshua had barely finished speaking when Hawkeye overheard him and immediately kicked him out. Joshua didn't mind, he didn't plan to stay long anyway. Shortly after leaving the underground base, Joshua encountered the iron robot. "Please raise your hands," one robot said. "It's Beryl emerging." Other robots approached Joshua. Joshua pulled a handsome-looking pistol from his trouser pocket. It was actually a powerful laser gun, one he had crafted long ago and upgraded several times. The robot continued, "Please don't resist. You only have one life, so cherish it." It was true. Life is only one. Joshua pulled the trigger, and a red laser shot out. It pierced the robot's head. The robot fell to the ground, but the other robots attacked Joshua frantically, with bullets, lasers, and all sorts of other attacks. Joshua didn't dodge. The symbiote used cosmic energy to form a barrier in front of him, a barrier the robots couldn't penetrate. Joshua shot almost every robot one by one. These robots were too fragile against his weapons. In no time, Joshua had dispatched them all. He then began studying them. These robots had some gemstone energy. It seemed Stark was indeed using gemstones to create robots. He wondered what kind of robots he would create next. Joshua was quite excited. He hoped they would be very powerful. "What's that?" Stark stared at the screen. He'd originally thought he'd send these robots to trouble Captain America and his men to obtain data, but he'd instead encountered Joshua, and even single-handedly eliminated them all. The data he'd obtained wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He began to study Joshua's data. Was that golden thing some kind of energy? Energy barriers were a useful tool, though. After some thought, he decided to add energy barriers to his new robot army. Now he had the Mind Stone, which could provide a vast amount of energy. He also planned to use the Mind Stone as a power source, thus possessing nearly unlimited energy. Let's begin crafting. Soon, the first Mind Stone-powered armor was ready. He'd barely finished the suit when someone arrived. It was an assassin, out to kill Stark. He gripped his blade and declared, "I'll kill you." Stark looked back at the assassin and said, "Really?" The Iron Man suit on Stark's armor. He raised his hand, and a flash of orange light emanated. The light pierced the assassin. The assassin clutched his head, feeling strange. Someone was controlling him. He glanced at Stark, but in the next second, Stark had already taken control. He said, "Go, kill them." The assassin vanished. Mind control truly worked. Stark walked to the edge of the building and looked down at the bustling crowd below. They were busy but uncomplaining, for they were all controlled by him using the Mind Stone. If he could rule the world, he could bring eternal peace and possess the power to protect it, his own world. Joshua sat on the balcony of a small cabin. It was peaceful, a perfect place for retirement. And it was quite crowded. An elderly American man spoke. "Tony Stark has gone mad. He wants to control everyone." Before the old man stood a beautiful girl, who listened silently, occasionally speaking. As if noticing Joshua, the girl smiled brightly. "Perhaps young people need some space." The old man glanced at Joshua and stood up to leave. The girl moved closer and said, "Hello, my name is Sia." "My name is Joshua Parker." Then the two began chatting. The girl was worried about Tony Stark. She said, now Stark has basically taken control of the United States. Next will be the surrounding countries. One day, he'll control the world. The girl was worried. Joshua said, have faith in superheroes. The girl gave a wry smile and said, superheroes can't stand up to Stark. Even the Hulk has been defeated. Don't be too pessimistic. There are still many people in this world who are very powerful, Joshua said. Let's hope so. By the way, there's a party coming up soon. Do you have time? Sorry, I have things to do later, Joshua said. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Gout's Privilege. Joshua grabbed his fishing rod and went fishing. Just as he'd set the bait, a familiar figure appeared. It was Natasha, dressed in a black leotard. She didn't look well, with blood trickling down her shoulder. Joshua, Natasha walked over to him and said, Stark has completely taken over America. Next up will be the other countries. No one can stop him. She sat beside him. She was tired from desperately trying to escape for so long. Any food? She asked. Yes, Joshua offered Natasha a little food, which she devoured ravenously. She'd barely eaten anything during her escape. This world is hopeless, Natasha said as she ate. Tony Stark was now frantic. Oh, Joshua silently swung his fishing rod. Aren't you worried? Natasha couldn't help but wonder. Joshua acted so calm, as if he didn't care. Worried? Why should he be worried? Stark, a mere gem, wasn't even worthy enough to carry his shoes, so what did he have to worry about? Was he worried that Stark was too weak? Yes, Joshua said. Natasha ate her food and then said, Stark will control everyone, turning them into mere tools, forever deprived of their freedom. Really? That's truly incredible, Joshua said calmly. As the two chatted, a roar erupted, and a dense swarm of robots appeared, surrounding Joshua and Natasha. Natasha drew her gun, ready to fight. The robots made way, and a figure emerged. It was Iron Man. Natasha said, You're looking for me. Get him to leave. He's just an ordinary man. Now all she could hope was that Stark would let Joshua go. Stark looked at Natasha and said, I'm not here for you. You're like an ant to me. Don't take yourself too seriously. This angered Natasha. Why would Stark come for Joshua? Stark said, You possess the technology for multiverse travel, don't you? He approached Joshua, unleashing the power of the Mind Stone. He sought to control Joshua and acquire the technology for multiverse travel. When he felt ready, he said, Hand over the technology you possess, stupid, Joshua said, looking at Stark. How could a Mind Stone possibly control him? Was he just imagining things? Stark, why didn't it work? Initially surprised, Stark ordered the robots to attack Joshua. Joshua sighed, I'm just here for fun, bro. The robots swarmed towards him. Natasha counterattacked, but only 2 robots could defeat her. Joshua didn't move, but the symbiote within him did. Zero had used Joshua's power to create a body. He couldn't leave everything to Joshua. As soon as Zero appeared, the symbiote quickly transferred itself to her. Zero said, I can handle it. Together, we'll be faster, the symbiote said. The symbiote suit attached itself to Zero's body, and a pitch-black symbiote cape quickly emerged. Zero looked handsome now. The symbiote's black matter formed blades on her arms, pitch-black blades. With a single strike, Zero slashed through countless robots, the steel machines frail before her. Stark lunged at Joshua. After all, the enemy had to be the leader. But Zero was significantly faster, grabbing Stark. Her hand suddenly plunged into Stark's steel suit and ripped out the Mind Stone. Stark was stunned. Was his suit so fragile? Zero tossed him to the ground. After dispatching Stark, Zero spent a moment dispatching the other robots. Once quiet fell, Zero vanished. The symbiote returned to Joshua and handed him the Mind Stone. Joshua considered the stone, then tossed it to Natasha, saying, Here, consider it your meal money. Natasha had given him food before, but it hadn't tasted very good. Natasha was bewildered. She looked at the Mind Stone and said, You don't want it? Well, it's just like a piece of stone to me, Joshua said. The stone couldn't strengthen him, so there was no point in keeping it. Joshua quickly left the place, but only after catching a fish. Walking down the street, A tall black man suddenly stopped him. "What's going on?" Joshua asked. "I need money," the tall black man said. Joshua laughed and said, "I'm not your parents, why should I give you money? Get out of here." The black man muttered a few curse words and turned to leave. "What did you say?" Joshua asked. He had just heard the black man cursing at him. Was his gaze gone, or was his fist weak? The black man looked at Joshua, thinking that as a well-known figure, he wouldn't do anything to him. After all, he would definitely be discredited. So he said, "Fuck you, how boring." Joshua raised his hand and slapped him. The man instantly transformed into a bloody mist. Sometimes he wanted to back down, but then he thought, "I'm invincible, why should I put up with this, so why back down?" Many people witnessed this scene, and wherever Joshua's gaze passed, they avoided him, fearing that he would slap them to death. Joshua left the scene. Only after Joshua left did people begin to discuss the situation. A white young man said, "That's terrifying." "Yes, it's terrifying that someone suddenly turned into bloody mist," another old man said. "To kill someone just because of a few words, isn't he?" the white young man said. The old man looked at the white young man and said, "Don't you think it's unfair?" "Yes, it's unfair. He killed people and got away with it," the young man said. The old man laughed and said, "Do you think gods should abide by our rules?" "Well, even if they have great power, they can't just kill people," the young man said. "But who can sanction him? The United States? Or a superhero? Kid, no one can sanction him. If you want to survive in this city, don't mess with him. He's just like any other person." Chapter 191 Fallen Princess? Joshua tossed the dragon, who was lying on his lap, onto the sofa and said, "I'm going to play some games." "Yeah," Anna replied, then silently worked on her homework. She'd made a lot of progress recently, but it wasn't enough. Her level was now considered average, but that was all. The rest of the spider team was busy helping others, while she could only catch up at home. Ugh, why are they all so smart? Anna bit her pen. Short-haired Gwen didn't look like a good student, but she could usually get good grades just by studying before a test. She still had to work hard. Joshua went to his room and put on his helmet. The next moment, a dense, cosmic universe filled his vision. Let's just pick randomly, Joshua thought. Only the unknown could bring him joy. In the dim forest, a black-haired boy appeared out of nowhere. He looked around. It was so quiet. Could there be some monster? The surroundings were eerie. It was so quiet that even the chirping of insects was inaudible. It was obvious that some monster was keeping them quiet. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew by. It not only ruffled Joshua's hair but also brought with it the scent of blood. What could it be? Joshua hurried over. He thought he heard something, like a monster eating. If it was an interesting monster, he'd capture a couple and take them home. His vision gradually widened, and he could see a figure. It was a woman in a kimono, gnawing at a corpse. A ghost? A ghoul? Both were somewhat disgusting, and he had no intention of taking it home. She looked hungry and ate quickly. But suddenly, she stopped, turning her head to see a handsome, black-haired boy. He was so handsome, so beautiful that it was impossible to look away. She instinctively touched her face. No scars. She had once been a disfigured woman, unsatisfied even as a prostitute. It wasn't until recently that she became a ghost, and her beauty was restored. After eating, her desire for food was gone, and her eyes fell on Joshua. This handsome young man seemed like he could be used and eaten. Really nice. He's so good looking, and his flesh must be delicious too. She slowly stood up. The black-haired boy didn't move. Was he petrified? He was so adorable. I just wondered if he'd scream and run away after his arm was torn off. Joshua picked up a knife from the ground. It was clearly a special knife for slaying demons. He remembered it was called the Nichiren blade. The female demon said, "You don't look like someone who knows how to use a knife." Joshua said nothing. He felt the knife. It was decent, but still rubbish. Run! Suddenly, a figure leaped out, gripping the blade tightly and slashing at the female demon. It was a black-haired woman with impressive breasts and slender legs. The female demon retreated hastily, but her face was still cut, leaving bloodstains on her smooth face. She screamed in pain, her eyes suddenly fierce. The woman shouted, "Run," and with that, she charged at the female demon, her speed almost inhuman. But the female ghost was just as fast. Was this the effect of the breathing valve? He'd been to the Daoki continent before, So he had some knowledge of cultivation, but this breathing method was clearly different from the Tao Key continent's practices. Perhaps he could develop one himself. But that would require him to summon his master. He needed to understand this world before he could create a breathing method that suited him. While the woman was quite powerful, the female ghost who had just devoured several humans was clearly more formidable. The female ghost wasn't in a hurry to kill her, she wanted to play around for a while. So weak, so weak. Is this someone from the Demon Slayer Corps? The ghost scoffed. Her attacks intensified. Ha ha ha. By then, Joshua's master had descended. After understanding the rules of this world, he had created his own breathing method. Hurry up, the woman couldn't bear it any longer. She looked at Joshua, puzzled as to why he hadn't fled yet. Leave, Joshua asked, knife in hand. Why should I leave? The ghost licked her tongue and said, if you don't, I'll eat you. Really? Joshua approached the ghost. The woman tried to stop him, but her wounds were too severe. She cried, run. The ghost rushed toward Joshua, crushing the ground beneath her feet, her speed instantly increasing to a terrifying level. Ha ha ha, the ghost made an unpleasant sound. So noisy, Joshua said, then swung his knife. A cyan wind appeared on the blade. Joshua's speed suddenly increased. Breath of wind, slash. The ghost said, it's useless. I'll kill you. Her fingertips lengthened and grabbed Joshua's blade. Stupid, Joshua muttered. Taking his knife with her hand, was she looking down on him? Joshua's knife cleanly severed the woman's arm, even severing her neck. How is this possible? The female ghost muttered, then turned to ash. Joshua plunged his knife into the ground. The woman slowly stood up and began to speak. You? Before she could finish, her vision went black and she fainted. What a hassle, Joshua muttered. But he couldn't help her, after all, she had intended to help him. Joshua began to tend to the woman's wounds. Wow, what a figure, so voluptuous. The woman had numerous wounds, even poisoned, and it looked like she'd been through several battles before. She also had some old wounds, suggesting she'd frequently battled demons. Joshua treated the wounds swiftly, even repairing the older ones. The next morning, the woman regained consciousness, rubbed her eyes, and saw Joshua. He had saved her last night, and she said, thank you. Yes, Joshua said. Then the woman asked, are you a Demon Slayer Corps veteran? I'm not, Joshua denied. The woman looked around and spotted some bodies, so she stood up and prepared to bury them. Joshua watched silently. Suddenly, the woman froze for a moment, then said, my wounds are healed. She looked at Joshua and said, did you save me? Senior, let me help you, the woman said. Her name was Miyamoto Sakura, and she now considered Joshua a senior. I'm not your senior, Joshua couldn't help but say, but he handed the woman the wild boar he had caught. The woman began to expertly prepare the boar, saying, wild boar meat is delicious. She often hunted wild game, so she was very skilled at preparing it. She didn't mind the blood at all. She quickly finished. All right, senior, it's ready to eat, Miyamoto Sakura said. Joshua looked at the tall woman, who was even taller than him. It felt strange for her to call him senior. But her hands and feet were still very nimble, which made Joshua feel much more relaxed. He tasted it and said, it tastes really good. Hey, Miyamoto Sakura gave a silly laugh. The two finished their meal quickly, but Miyamoto Sakura was a real leader. She said, senior, you're so amazing, you must be a pillar, right? The pillars are the pinnacle of the Demon Slayer Corps. Joshua had killed the female demon in seconds, so she assumed he must be one. She had just joined the Corps and didn't know much about the pillars, she had never even seen one. I'm not, Joshua said. This woman was really annoying. Miyamoto Sakura didn't believe her, thinking Joshua was on some secret mission. The two gradually walked into a city. Miyamoto Sakura said casually, senior, let's go for a drink. Joshua shook his head and said, I don't drink. Miyamoto Sakura looked at Joshua and suddenly said, is that so? It was normal for her not to drink. She went to buy some wine, but when she turned back, Joshua had disappeared. Senior, Miyamoto Sakura began to look for Joshua. Meanwhile, Joshua was strolling through what seemed to be a prostitute district. Heavily made up women were everywhere, waving frantically at the sight of him, trying to catch his eye. But Joshua showed no interest in them. He had never been to a place like this before, and it seemed rather intriguing. Occasionally, as he passed by houses, he heard crashing noises, mingled with the seductive voices of women. Suddenly, Joshua sensed something, like the presence of a ghost. He followed a ghost scent and quickly slipped into a courtyard. Cautiously, he soon spotted the ghost. It was a woman in a room, beautiful, but clearly a ghost. She held a girl, unconscious. The ghost wanted to eat her. Joshua pushed open the door. The sound of the door opening interrupted the ghost's movements, and she turned to look at Joshua. She was struck by Joshua's beauty. She had never seen anyone so beautiful, and she suddenly wanted to make this beautiful person into a doll to please her. She tossed the unconscious girl aside. She said, "You're so beautiful. I want you." Joshua slowly drew his sword and said, "Are you Daki?" The ghost girl nodded. She was Daki, and her brother was inside her. Neither of them exchanged many words. Daki said, "Let's become a ghost together." A powerful and beautiful ghost. Joshua was stunned by this. What did powerful and beautiful mean? A creature that feeds on humans couldn't possibly be beautiful. And as for being strong? Are you kidding? How could a creature with obvious weaknesses claim to be powerful? Joshua shook his head and said, "Ghosts aren't powerful." Joshua's dismissive attitude made Daki feel a little uncomfortable. She frowned and said, "It seems you need some training, but it's okay. I'll turn you into an obedient child, someone who listens to me." She was possessive. Joshua didn't want to continue talking. He suddenly moved. He was like a ferocious beast. Daki snorted coldly, then waved her hand, and the silk ribbon flew towards Joshua. Joshua swung his sword, and it was no simple strike. Breath of wind, slash. This was a move he had invented. With a clean, sharp strike, he severed Dakimiki's silk ribbon, even severing her head along with it. The next second, a dark figure lunged at Joshua. Joshua nimbly dodged. A demon with a scythe appeared. Though a smile played on his face as he looked at Joshua, he felt a lingering fear within him. This human was dangerous. Was he a pillar? No. His aura was even more dangerous than a pillar. He had killed some pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps before. While they were powerful, they were still weak. But this man before him was different. He was dangerous. "Senior," a voice suddenly called out. "We can escape." Dakimiki's brother grinned broadly and swung his scythe, sending it hurtling towards Miyamoto Sakura, who was not far away. If Joshua could save Sakura, he could escape with his sister. Joshua moved, severing the scythe with his sword. The courtesan Taro also took the opportunity to flee with Daki. Joshua didn't pursue them. After all, he was just traveling. If he had encountered them, he would have killed them. It was a pity that the big guy was at home, otherwise the two would not have escaped. Miyamoto Sakura swallowed and said, "I'm sorry, Senior." She knew that her presence had caused the demon to escape. "It's okay," Joshua said. Miyamoto Sakura disagreed. She stuck her butt out and said, "Senior, please punish me. My teacher always hits me like this whenever I make a mistake." "Forget it," Joshua said, feeling a little inappropriate. "Please do this." Miyamoto Sakura looked at Joshua seriously. Joshua looked at Miyamoto Sakura. This guy was a bit paranoid, even to the point of being perverted. He raised his hand and slapped it hard. "Pa, it hurts," Miyamoto Sakura screamed. She would scream loudly when she was hit so that her teacher would leave her alone. But to be honest, Joshua was really ruthless. Miyamoto Sakura touched her buttocks with tears in her eyes. She muttered, "It hurts so much, my butt is going to break." Joshua said, "This is where brothels gather. What are you doing here?" "Of course I'm looking for you." "I thought you were captured by a ghost," Miyamoto Sakura said. She had a very keen nose, and Joshua had a very pleasant smell. She could easily find Joshua by following the smell. "By the way, will you still follow me? Don't you have any mission?" Miyamoto Sakura said. "Senior is very strong, and I also want to become stronger, so I plan to follow you to kill ghosts and hone myself. I should be able to learn something from your battles." Chapter 192 Mixed Bathing. Miyamoto Sakura, knife in hand, watched Joshua, who was not far away. Before him stood a young woman of exceptional elegance. The two of them engaged in a conversation. Her hearing was excellent, so she could hear what they were saying. The woman had lost her husband a year prior and had since devoted herself to her career. Now successful, she was looking for a man, and had set her sights on Senpai. The woman treated Senpai very kindly, but Senpai clearly had no such desires. He politely declined the offer. But the woman remained persistent. A few minutes later, The woman leaned against a tree, watching Joshua leave with a sorrowful look. "Senpai, she looks so sad," Miyamoto Sakura said, feeling sorry for him. Seeing such a beautiful woman cry was truly heartbreaking. "Really?" Joshua asked. He was already doing her a great favor by patiently discussing something he disliked for so long. "Senpai, what are we going to do next?" Miyamoto Sakura asked, ready to slay the demons. Let's get something to eat first," Joshua said. He planned to stay here for a while, firstly to have some fun, and secondly to deal with Takemaki and her brother. Those two demons wouldn't give up easily. Next, it was time for hide and seek. "Oh," Miyamoto Sakura nodded. She was also feeling a little hungry. The two of them found a restaurant to eat. The food tasted okay, but that was all. Miyamoto Sakura was a big eater and finished a lot in a matter of minutes. After they both finished eating, Miyamoto Sakura said, "Senior, do you have money?" Hearing this, Joshua was stunned. He didn't have any money. He thought Miyamoto Sakura did. After all, she was a member of the Demon Slayer Corps, and these people should be paid. Their eyes met, and Miyamoto Sakura swallowed. She seemed to have guessed something. Could it be that the senior didn't have any money either? At this time, the bill collector had arrived. Joshua said, "Run, huh?" "Oh," Miyamoto Sakura grabbed the chicken leg and ran. "Asshole," the bill collector immediately cursed. Why would they do such a thing when they looked like they had enough money? The two of them were so fast that ordinary people could not catch up. Huff, 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 huff. "Senpai, we seem to have done something wrong," Miyamoto Sakura said, then cleaned the chicken leg in her hand. "It's okay, give it to them when you have money," Joshua said. "Yeah, that's fine," Miyamoto Sakura nodded seriously. As long as her salary came in, she could pay it back next month. "Boss, I'll pay you," a woman handed the money to the angry boss. She had seen Miyamoto Sakura and Joshua flee. She knew Miyamoto Sakura. She was a big eater and often injured, but she was a girl with great potential. The boss took the money and nodded. She turned and left. The boy beside Sakura must be the senpai she was talking about, but there was no such person in the Demon Slayer Corps. This person wasn't from the Corps. He looked like a prodigy. I hope they can join the Corps. She chased after the two, her movements light and graceful, like a butterfly. Her clothes spread out as she ran, making her look even more like a butterfly. She soon found Miyamoto Sakura and the boy. They were fishing. She wanted to test the boy's strength. She drew her sword and attacked him, confident that even a moderately skilled player wouldn't be able to injure him. Joshua yanked the sword cleanly and effortlessly. Then, abruptly, he turned back. Dang! The swords clashed, but Joshua's force was far greater. With a flick of his arm, he pushed his attacker away. Joshua gripped the sword, wind swirling around the blade. "Sister Butterfly," Miyamoto Sakura said immediately. She recognized the woman before her. This woman was Shinobu Kacho, a pillar, a supremely powerful figure. The two of them often met in medical facilities. "Hi, Sakura," Shinobu Kacho said, also offering a gentle smile. Joshua muttered something. Was this woman mentally ill? She suddenly attacked him. If he were a bigger person, a single slap would have killed her. Noticing Joshua's displeasure, Shinobu Kacho said, "I'm sorry for testing you." Joshua snorted. Miyamoto Sakura ran over to Shinobu Kacho and asked, "Sister Shinobu, why are you here? I received your message and the news about the upper ranks, so I came to investigate." She had only just come here to learn about the demon. It looked like a dangerous battle. After all, the upper ranks were incredibly dangerous. At least no one had yet been able to kill them, but many of the pillars had fallen at their hands. Miyamoto Sakura recounted her past experiences to Shinobu Kacho. After hearing what she had said, Shinobu Kacho looked at Joshua seriously. This young man was definitely a pillar-level warrior, even more powerful than ordinary pillars. "We can work together to kill this upper-rank demon," Shinobu Kacho said. Joshua said, "I won't help you, at least not for free." Shinobu Kacho nodded and said, "That's right. I'll pay you. By the way, I just paid for your meal." Joshua, Miyamoto Sakura rubbed her head awkwardly, not realizing Shinobu had seen her. She said, "I'll pay you back when I get my paycheck." "I'll give it to you later," Shinobu Kacho smiled. Then the three of them set out. It was night. Miyamoto Sakura's nose twitched, and she said, "There's a ghost presence here, be careful." Joshua silently sensed the situation. There were ghosts, many of them, likely newly transformed. It looked like the two ghosts from before were responsible. Kacho Shinobu drew her sword, laced with poison, a toxin extremely deadly to ghosts. A figure roared, charging straight at Kacho Shinobu. Kacho Shinobu also rushed out, now looking even more like a butterfly. Her blade swiftly slashed the ghost's throat. Joshua drew his sword and said, "Be careful." Miyamoto Sakura nodded. More and more ghosts rushed out, so many that they looked like zombies. Joshua murmured, "It seems we need a large-scale attack, breath of wind, tornado." Joshua swung his sword fiercely. Wind appeared and quickly became a massive, raging tornado. The tornado swept up the demons, tearing them to pieces. Shinobu Kacho looked back and saw Joshua's attack. It was indeed a powerful attack. Miyamoto Sakura slashed the head of a demon with her sword and said, "These demons are weak." Of course they were weak. After all, they were mass-produced, used to confuse them. The Takemaki siblings probably hadn't left yet. Were they calling for reinforcements or what? Joshua was curious. All three were so powerful, the demons were quickly defeated. Joshua silently put away his sword and said, "I have to take a shower. I'm drenched in sweat." "I want to take a shower too," Miyamoto Sakura said. She had a lot of wounds, but they were healing quickly. The shallow ones didn't leave scars, but the deeper ones did. "Then let's go together." Takemaki said, "Brother, let's go kill them." She firmly believed her brother was invincible, and she was also very strong. There was no reason for her to lose. Jifutaro shook his head and said, "He's coming soon, and then we can easily kill them, the demon who turned them into demons." Yet, Taki nodded. It looked like she would have to hide for a few days. Meanwhile, Joshua silently watched the two people in front of him. He was taking a bath, but it was a mixed bath. Of course, the whole place was reserved. They were really rich. Speaking of which, Miyamoto Sakura's breasts were amazing, almost floating. Compared to hers, Kacho Shinobu's were a little smaller, but still amazing. It felt good for the first time in a mixed bath, but across from her were two beautiful women. Miyamoto Sakura was also looking at Joshua. The definition of his muscles was so perfect. Could a boy's body be so beautiful? A beauty full of power. Kacho Shinobu then said, "Do you want to join the Demon Slayer Corps? We specialize in killing demons, and will provide you with services, such as treatment, money, and even weapons." She wanted Joshua to join them. "Forget it, I don't want to join any organization." "This is fine," Joshua said. If he joined the Demon Slayer Corps, he'd have to be the leader, but he doubted the others would agree. Shinobu Kacho smiled and said, "Is that so?" She stopped short, lest Joshua become offended. Actually, it wasn't a bad idea. He was indeed very handsome. As time passed, more and more girls arrived. They were support personnel, weak in combat, but very important. Soon, the room was completely filled with girls, and Joshua was dazzled. Why were they all girls? The girls watched Joshua, whispering to each other. "He's got a great body, he's so handsome." The girls' chatter grew increasingly outrageous. Joshua ignored them, quietly soaking in the hot spring. He closed his eyes. Seeing Joshua's eyes closed, the girls, more courageous than usual, curiously touched his chest. The firmness was unbearable. The girls began to approach Joshua. Joshua was quickly overwhelmed by the girls' actions. "Joshua," he said, "this is clearly harassment, isn't it? Someone even attacked him in the groin. Don't go too far, okay? Do you believe I'll turn this place into a giant gin party?" He opened his eyes and shooed the girls away. The girls giggled and pulled away. Joshua was about to leave, but something was stirring, so he paused. Some of the girls were deliberately flirting. If it were just one, Joshua wouldn't have been particularly interested, but there were so many girls here. This was a gin party for him alone. The thought of it was thrilling. Joshua's mind began to struggle. After all, this was another world, he could do whatever he wanted, and it was all consensual. Joshua was planning to throw a gin party. Just then, Shinobu Kacho shooed the girls away. Joshua, soon, the girls left, leaving Joshua alone. He left soon after. Boa Hancock was reading in her room. She was now splitting her time between two worlds, sometimes in the pirate world, sometimes living here. Honestly, she quite liked this life, but she also had one complaint: Joshua and she rarely got intimate. If she didn't initiate it, he wouldn't initiate it. After all, She was a person with a lot of needs. She glanced at the book and saw a passage describing a relationship between a man and a woman. She read it and suddenly felt a pang of excitement. She decided to go find him. Just as she was thinking this, Joshua ran in. She put the book down and said, "You," before she could finish, he tackled her. Boa Hancock, so anxious? But she didn't hate him. In fact, she acted even more anxious than Joshua. "Where's Senpai?" Miyamoto Sakura tilted her head. She seemed to have lost him. Shinobu Kacho coughed. This was the red light district, and Joshua, having been teased like that before, might be looking for a woman now. She looked at the still somewhat clumsy Miyamoto Sakura and said, he might have something to deal with. Miyamoto Sakura became depressed when she heard this. She said, "Senior, do you dislike me? You just left here without saying anything. Did the senior dislike her eating too much?" Shinobu Kacho patted Miyamoto Sakura's shoulder and said, "Go and rest for a while. We should have another battle tonight." Miyamoto Sakura nodded and went to rest. Shinobu Kacho also rested for a while. They might face the upper moon next, so they had to be careful. They also had to stay in good shape. After a long time, Miyamoto Sakura got up, washed up and started exercising. After the exercise, she felt hungry. She had to go eat something. She borrowed some money from a medical staff and went out to eat. This time she ate a lot. She wiped her tears while eating. Why did the senior abandon her? She was obviously very capable. "What's wrong with you?" Joshua saw Miyamoto Sakura as soon as he arrived. This guy was stuffing food into her mouth while crying. Wasn't she afraid of choking? "Senior," Miyamoto Sakura was stunned. She swallowed the food in her mouth and said, "You didn't abandon me, I abandoned you." Joshua tilted his head. Miyamoto Sakura immediately threw herself into Joshua's arms. Joshua is now in sage mode. So he pushed Miyamoto Sakura away with a little disgust and said, "It's disgusting." Miyamoto Sakura touched her head and then smiled foolishly. "Senior, you eat too." "I've eaten." Joshua waved his hand and said, he had eaten before he came. Chapter 193 Gout's Power. Doma arrived at Hanamichi and found the two demons, Dokimaki and his brother. Jaiutarao said, "There are members of the Demon Slayer Corps here." Doma looked at the two demons and said, "Why not just eat them? It's not like we haven't eaten them before." Jaiutarao wanted to eat them too, but his strength was clearly insufficient. If a reckless girl hadn't run into his attack range last time, both he and Dokimaki would have been killed. Lately, to avoid a black-haired boy, he barely even dared to show his face. Dokimaki said, "He's very powerful. If it weren't for her brother, she would have been reduced to ash." Doma looked at the two demons. Jaiutarao, though ugly, was a demon with great potential, while Dokimaki was a worthless creature. While beautiful, her strength and potential were paltry. If it weren't for her brother, she would have died several times over. He smiled and said, "Let's go. I'd like to see who can defeat you." Seeing Doma's relaxed expression, Dakheim said, "He's very strong." "Yeah," Doma nodded, but he didn't seem to care. His strength far surpassed both Jifutaro and Dakheim's. Anyone they couldn't handle was nothing to him. The three ghosts rushed towards Joshua's location. Senior's gotten stronger again, Miyamoto Sakura sighed. Before, she and Shinobu Kacho could have teamed up with Joshua, but in just 2 days, Joshua had gained the strength to crush them both. Senior's strength had grown too fast. It was unbelievable. Shinobu Kacho sheathed her sword and said, "You're getting stronger at an alarming rate." "Really?" "I don't feel anything," Joshua said. He stretched his arms and said, "I went to the flower market." Miyamoto Sakura curled her lips and said, "Senior, you're such a lecher." Shinobu Kacho nodded. Joshua wasn't actually looking for women, but for demons. But the ghosts would probably come looking for him, so he headed for a more secluded spot. "It seems he's spotted us," Jaiutarao exclaimed. He could smell Joshua's scent, fleeing towards the woods. The three ghosts quickened their pace. In a basin, they spotted Joshua. He didn't seem to be fleeing, but rather luring them there. Doma looked at Joshua with a touch of surprise. Even he found such a handsome man stunning. Dokimaki said fiercely, "You're dead this time." She had been slashed by Joshua before, which had infuriated her. Joshua drew his sword and asked, "Any last words?" Jaiutarao drew his demon scythe, sensing Joshua's danger. Doma grinned and exclaimed, "What an incredible aura!" But, what? Before Doma could finish, Joshua, a shadowy figure, rushed towards him and slashed through him with a single blow. Such speed, such strength. What's with this guy? Why is he so strong? Jifutaro attacked Joshua with his demon sickle, but Joshua slashed through it with a single blow, even severing both of his hands. Brother, Dakami enraged. She lunged at Joshua, her sharp claws piercing him. Though it looked fast, it was slow for a wind man. Joshua reached out and grabbed Dakami's neck. Jifutaro rushed at Joshua like a madman. This was his sister. Arms sprouted. Jifutaro screamed. Joshua raised his sword and swung it casually. The wind transformed into several massive wind blades, slicing Jifutaro into pieces. However, he survived, being a demon after all. Brother, Dakami whispered faintly. Doma's body had also recovered. He felt the man before him was incredibly powerful. Incredibly strong. Was he truly human? How could he possess such power? He was practically godlike. Joshua looked at Jifutaro and said, so weak. Jifutaro's body gradually recovered, and he stood up and said, let her go. His eyes gradually hardened. Tisk, that's a nice look, but if that's all, you'll all die, Joshua said casually. Killing the 3 demons wasn't difficult for him now. Doma was already preparing an escape route. Suddenly, Joshua threw Dakime in front of Jifutaro. Jifutaro was confused. Why? Joshua looked at Doma and said, you want to run, right, Doma? That's not good, because I haven't had enough fun yet. Joshua rushed towards Doma, knife in hand. He tried to use the blood demon technique, but Joshua was already in front of him. The Nichiren sword in his hand cut Doma's neck in an instant. It was too fast for Doma to react. Doma's body gradually turned to ash. Joshua muttered, what a loser. Jifutaro cried out, run. No, I won't, Dakame said. Suddenly sensing danger, Jifutaro pushed Dakame away, and Joshua's blade split him in two. The silk ribbons on Dakame's body stabbed at Joshua. Joshua severed them with a single blow. Dakame fled, clutching half of Jifutaro's body. Suddenly, a figure appeared. It was Miyamoto Sakura, her blade slashing at Dakame. Dakame, clutching her brother, quickly dodged. Senior, why didn't you wait for us? Miyamoto Sakura couldn't help but ask. She had followed Joshua's scent to him, having assumed he was looking for a woman, but he was actually out to kill demons. Kato Shinobu also appeared and said, we'll help you. Joshua said, alright, I'll take care of the male demons, and you take care of the females. Joshua's blade swung up. The gust of wind lashed out, severely wounding Dakame and separating her from her brother. We'll cut off their heads together, Joshua declared. Shinobu Kato nodded and charged at Daki. Daki was actually quite weak compared to the pillars. Her brother was the stronger, a demon capable of killing a pillar. A large amount of silk erupted from Daki, but Shinobu Kato cut it off, bringing her blade down on Daki's neck. Miyamoto Sakura felt only a gust of wind, and the next second Joshua's blade had severed Jyutarao's neck. So fast, Miyamoto Sakura murmured. Jyutarao's head tumbled down alongside Daki's. Jyutarao was stunned for a moment, then said, if it weren't for you holding me back, I wouldn't be so weak. Daki was stunned, but her eyes quickly grew angry. You're so strong, why did you still get your neck cut off? The siblings exchanged accusations. How ugly, Doma exclaimed, now only half a head remained. Shinobu Kato noticed this, her gaze shifting instantly. She cried, it's you, a demon who had killed her sister. She lost control. She rushed forward, piercing Doma's mouth with her knife. In a nearly hoarse voice, she said, do you know how much I've done to kill you? Doma was speechless. But he could sense Shinobu Kato's hatred, a deep, intense hatred. Doma's head crumbled to ash. Joshua listened silently as Jyutarao and Dakimaki exchanged accusations. I'm sorry. If I were stronger, you wouldn't have become a demon. If I were stronger, you wouldn't have been hurt, Jyutarao suddenly said. Dakimaki burst into tears, crying hard. Brother, don't leave me. Take me away, even if it means going to hell. Joshua remembered that after Dakimaki was killed, she had the chance to go to heaven, but she ended up in hell with Jyutarao. Their bond transcended everything. Although they would blame each other as before, their feelings for each other remained unchanged. At this point, Daki said, as expected of someone I've fallen for, if there were an afterlife, she hoped to meet someone like Joshua. Joshua stayed for a few days, mentoring Miyamoto Sakura. He didn't want this foolish person to be easily devoured by a demon. Feeling satisfied, he left. In Joshua's room, he removed his helmet and walked out. He lay on the sofa, looking at his phone. It's been this price for years. Is it your fault? Have you been working hard? Oh, Joshua looked at it, wondering how he could have come across something like this. It was such bad luck. He checked the comments section. There were all sorts of comments, and it seemed quite amusing. After a while, Joshua logged off. The people online were too outrageous. He decided to just be a bystander. A few minutes later, he received a message about a woman being attacked by a dinosaur. Joshua silently activated his perception. He quickly learned everything. The woman had been attacked by a velociraptor. Nothing is surprising in this world, so Joshua didn't take it seriously. But he still had to capture it. It was a velociraptor. And there were some hiding out there, so he had to capture them. That way, he'd have a herd of young velociraptors, perfect for keeping as guardians. Joshua walked out and took to the sky. In a moment, he arrived at the spot where the woman had been attacked. He was surrounded by a swarm of velociraptors, growling as if they were ready to tear him apart. Joshua rubbed his chin and said, "So weak. I guess I need to modify them a bit later." Just as the velociraptors were about to attack, Joshua snapped his fingers, and all of them stopped. Joshua's body released some black symbiote material, which he placed on the velociraptors. This symbiote could strengthen the velociraptors and even control them, making it incredibly useful. He released his time freeze. The velociraptors were able to move again, but this time, they didn't attack Joshua, but instead submitted. "Master, they're hungry," the symbiote said. "Yes," Joshua said. "Go hunting, but don't eat humans." The raptors quickly left. Just then, a woman approached, her face bandaged with gauze, where a raptor had wounded her earlier. She was a woman of beauty, and now, in the prime of her youth, she didn't want to leave a wound on her face that wouldn't heal. Seeing Joshua, she said, "Mr. Superman, please heal it for me. I'll pay you." Joshua walked up to the woman, touched her skin, and said, "It's free. I've captured this raptor, and it's my pet from now on, so I'll heal it for you and pay you." After a moment, Joshua said, "Okay." The woman removed the bandage and touched her face. Miraculously, the wounds were gone. She looked in the mirror and saw she looked even better. "Thank you." "Nothing," Joshua said. Short-haired Gwen was walking down the street. She was alone today, having previously visited long-haired Gwen's home. She looked at George, Stacy, and the others. It was wonderful. If only her world still existed. "Hi," a blonde boy spotted Gwen. Gwen looked at the boy, who was quite handsome and wearing all sorts of designer clothes, clearly a wealthy man. This boy was Harry Osborn, a recent transfer student who seemed to have become close friends with Peter. "Hello," Gwen said. Harry Osborn said, "Peter has a date, but I'm not familiar with the area, so could you help me out?" Of course, Gwen, with short hair, glanced at the address Peter had given her and then took Harry Osborn to find Peter. When they found Peter, he was sipping coffee, looking very mature. Gwen, with short hair, felt quite amused. "I'm going now," she said. "Bye, and thank you," Harry Osborn said. Gwen smiled. Harry Osborn then walked in and sat down with Peter to chat. Gwen had only taken a few steps when she ran into Mary Jane. Mary Jane took the initiative to greet her, and Gwen responded. Gwen pointed at Peter and the other two in the cafe and said, "Are you with them?" Mary Jane nodded and said, "I need to ask Peter some lab questions, so I came." "So this is a study session?" "Yeah," Mary Jane nodded. When Joshua returned home, he saw a lot of people. Mary Jane and Harry Osborn were there. Joshua put the shrunken velociraptor down and said, "You guys, this is a study session," Peter said. Anna was among them. "Oh," Joshua said without further question. He gathered the monster queen, the mutant T-Rex, the mutant dog, and the little dragon. He pointed at the velociraptors and said, "They'll be part of this family from now on." The monster queen nodded lazily, not really concerned. The others didn't have any objections either. Chapter 194: A Weird DC World. Friday. Joshua leaned against the wall, reading a book. Outside the window were hanging plants. It had been so long since he'd read a book. This was a fantasy book. The author's ideas were brilliant, and it looked quite interesting. In front of him stood a tall woman with long, slender legs and a full, rounded figure. She was wearing a kippah, and her long legs stretched out beside him. Her long black hair cascaded down, and she was a stunningly beautiful woman. She too was reading a book, but she didn't seem particularly interested. Her eyes fell on Joshua and she said, "Aren't you bored?" "Yeah," Joshua said. To him, a book was a new world, and for him, this was quite interesting. Boa Hancock pulled her hair back and turned. She hadn't come here to read with Joshua. She leaned against the wall, her back to him. The fabric was taut, seemingly wrinkle-free, and incredibly round. It was so perfect, a masterpiece. She reached back and lifted the black silk fabric, revealing it. "Come on, I'm ready, Joshua." He put the book down and reached out to touch the irresistible object. It was so nice. Boa Hancock felt it, squinting her eyes and humming softly. Rain began to fall outside the window, pelting the greenery. The sky cleared after the rain. Tiny droplets of water dotted the greenery. Joshua's gaze fell on the world outside. Boa Hancock lay on her side, her chest heaving with satisfaction. "Are you leaving tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes, let's go for a walk. Maybe we'll find something unexpected," Joshua said. The Empress walked a short distance away, her back to Joshua, and picked up her black silk panties that had been discarded on the ground. She bent down, slipped her foot into them, and then slowly pulled them up. She said, "Your two women have been very unhappy lately. How long has it been since you've taken care of their sexual needs, Nami and Robin?" Joshua asked. "Well, now that they've fulfilled their dreams, their attention has shifted to you." "Oh," Joshua said. Boa Hancock said, "You're really aloof." "Really?" Joshua said, then looked at the book. Boa Hancock, now dressed, said, "Your service was excellent." "You're saying it as if I'm there to help you with your sexual desires," Joshua said. "Isn't that right?" Boa Hancock said. "Then treat me as one," Joshua said. Boa Hancock left. Was he too lustful? Joshua put the book down. Lustful, so be it. He wasn't a good person anyway. He glanced out the window and left. "Yo, isn't this a busybody?" the short-haired woman said, folding her arms. She was wearing white today, her striking breasts captivating. She had grown taller, more attractive, and a sense of maturity. When they first met, she was still a young girl, but now she was a tall beauty. Joshua asked about her situation. She told him that she had separated from Luffy and the others a year ago, and everyone had returned to their hometowns. Of course, they would get together from time to time, and some had already started families. Joshua said, "What a great adventure." Nami looked at Joshua. It might have been a short time for him, but it was a long journey for her. She looked at Joshua and said, "I've fulfilled my dream, so now I want to be a mother." Joshua, he hadn't expected Nami to have such thoughts. Nami said, "Usopp already has a child, a girl, a very cute girl. I'm not young anymore, so it's time for us to have a child." Joshua said nothing, somewhat resisting. Then Nami continued, "If you don't want children, then I'll find another life, and we'll call it a day." Neither of them spoke again, and Nami felt the wind blowing. Night. Nami stood up and wiped the sweat off her body. She asked, "Do you prefer a boy or a girl?" "I hate taking care of children, but I'm fine if it's less than 20 minutes, Joshua said. He had helped his sister take care of her children before he traveled through time. It was fun at first, but it became a hassle over time. "We've done it so many times before, why didn't I get pregnant? Is it because you're not good enough? Or is there something wrong with me?" Nami asked. "I don't want you to get pregnant," Joshua said. "Will it work this time?" Nami asked. "Yes." Joshua stayed here temporarily. The next day, Robin arrived. Without saying anything, she directly expressed her desire to Joshua with her body. After a while, Joshua completed his work and was subsequently sent away by Robin and Nami. The reason was that he was no longer needed after completing his mission. This time, Joshua arrived in a DC world, but the style seemed a little strange. "Hey, are you Superman's illegitimate son? You look pretty handsome. Want to have sex with me?" A woman spotted him floating in the air. Seeing Joshua remain silent, the woman lifted her shirt to reveal her upper body, then asked, "How's it going? This isn't the place for you to be horny." A woman rushed out, knocked the woman down with a baseball bat, and then grabbed her. The woman with the baseball bat was Harley Quinn, but she looked like she belonged to the Batman family. "Wow, Superman has a child? Hello, I'm Harley Quinn, Ivy's lover," she said. He seemed to understand what kind of world this was. In an anime, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were a couple, and everyone in that anime was outrageous, including Batman. "My name is Joshua Parker, and I'm Superman from another world," Joshua began. Harley Quinn piqued her interest and said, "When I was your age, I was still in class, but some old pervert kept peeking at my ass." She spoke a series of words, then said, "Let's have fun being superheroes together." Then she smashed a thief's head in with a baseball, sending his brains splattering. "That's disgusting," she couldn't help but exclaim. Joshua looked at Harley Quinn silently. She noticed Joshua's gaze and said, "If this were high school, I would definitely be willing to have sex with you, but now I have IV." Chapter 195 Trap. Joshua wandered around this world for a bit and then left, because damn, this is a fucking funny world. Any kind of spoof is allowed. Like the Joker becoming mayor, it's just too outrageous. "Why are you back?" Peter Parker asked. Joshua came back really early today. "I came back just in time," Joshua said. "Let's get back to reading." He was about to go back to his room when Anna called him. Anna hadn't gone with the others to explore the other world today. After all, she had a lot of homework to catch up on, and she was actually quite tired. She'd even started dancing recently, and every day was so full that she hadn't done much superhero work. Of course, she didn't need to do it. The others could handle it. "What's wrong?" Joshua asked, looking at Anna. Anna said, "I have something I want to show you." Joshua nodded and followed Anna into her room. Anna's room was filled with books and other things. She felt a little embarrassed to speak, but she didn't know what to do. Succubi are unique creatures, and they also experience estrus. As soon as they reach adulthood, they experience it, and she was in that phase right now. She began to say, "Help me." Her voice was weak, and her hands clutched at her clothes, looking shy. Joshua rubbed his head, then silently began to read her mind. He had to understand what was going on. In an instant, he knew what Anna was thinking. She was in estrus and wanted to sleep with him, but she was torn about whether he would dislike her. Joshua didn't hesitate. After all, he was a perverted man who wanted to have sex with any beautiful woman who showed even the slightest interest. So he said, "You can do anything to me." Anna was stunned for a moment, then looked at Joshua. She no longer held back. She just wanted to release herself completely. For the next few days, she would sick Joshua out whenever she had the chance. After a long while, Anna's estrus ended. Hathaway was swimming in her pool, with several female friends. They gathered and began to share their personal stories, but eventually, the topic turned to Joshua. A woman said, "I'm so envious. If I could have a relationship with Superman, I'd definitely take a stroll around the moon and send you pictures to envy." Another woman, wearing sunglasses, said, "You're so ugly. Look at Hathaway's figure and appearance. HMPH, I'm skilled." The woman couldn't help but say. The subject gradually veered off topic. Around noon, her friends gradually left. Hathaway thought for a moment and called Joshua. "Can you come to my place?" she asked. The previous topic had aroused her. While tools could be used, sometimes, once you've tasted something, you can't accept anything else. "Yes," Joshua arrived in a moment. Hathaway pulled Joshua toward the room. Time slipped by. It was afternoon. Joshua received a rescue message, looked at it, and flew toward his destination. When he landed, he saw a young man lying on the ground, in agony. A steel bar had pierced his body, but he didn't die immediately. "Please save him," the young man's family called out. The young man's mother had fainted, and his father's face was filled with grief. Joshua removed the bar and then used magic to heal the young man. The entire process took surprisingly little time. "Oh my God," the young man's father couldn't help but exclaim. The young man stood up and said, "Thank you." Joshua shook his head and said, "Just give me money." "Yes, finally." The young man's family gave Joshua a generous sum of money. Joshua turned and left. He didn't go home immediately, but planned to walk back slowly. After about 10 minutes, he encountered a black woman. He remembered this woman, who had previously criticized him for not saving her son. She asked, "Why did you save that person just now, but not my child? You're so idle," Joshua said, not interested in further conversation. Suddenly, the woman continued, "Just because we were black? That's why you won't save my child? Come on, he could save whoever he wanted." This was just a fun way for him to pass the time. Joshua took a step forward. Suddenly, the black woman spoke, I will have my revenge. She charged at Joshua at breakneck speed, inhuman speed. How boring. Joshua grew angry. If you want to die, then go ahead. He unleashed his thermal vision, which instantly reduced the woman to ash. Simultaneously, every video-capable device in the world displayed the image of Joshua killing the woman with his thermal vision. In an instant, the entire world exploded, everyone eagerly awaiting Joshua's next response. Would he offer any explanation for his actions? Joshua knew what had happened. Just then, a passerby spoke up. Superman, I know she attacked you first. I'll support you. She had witnessed the incident. Joshua said, can you record a video for me? The woman nodded and took out her phone to begin recording. Seeing the woman ready, Joshua said, did you see the video just now? So don't upset me, or you'll end up like the others before you. Okay, that's it. By the way, if anyone wants to experience a painless death, I can help you. Joshua signaled the woman to end. The woman ended the video and said, you're going to offend some people, really? Joshua said nonchalantly. The woman, holding her phone, said, I'll help you. Everyone you've saved will support you. Joshua looked at the woman and said, thank you. He left. Returning home, he saw Aunt May, who was sitting on the sofa and asked, can you tell me what happened? Joshua told her about the black woman. Aunt May then said, I'll go get some food. Just be yourself. She cared for Joshua more than anyone else, and valued him more. She didn't blame him, nor did she want to. After all, family was most important. Besides, this incident seemed like a trap, a deliberate one targeting Joshua. Peter Parker walked down and said, I know your character. You don't usually kill people unless provoked. They had lived together for over a decade, and he knew Joshua rarely took the initiative to kill. Chapter 196 Going to School with Children. Hello everyone, my name is Mary Jane Watson, and I'm Joshua's classmate. Well, I'm here just to tell you how much Joshua Parker, aka Superman, has done for us. He ended almost every war on Earth, and nations harmed by war have received compensation because of him. That's why people adore him. He invented the Superman app, which has practically made all criminals disappear. Mary Jane spoke a great deal in a single breath. There was a moment of silence on the set before a young man stood up and said, but he recently killed someone, a black woman. This woman had lost her child, and she believed Superman's inaction led to her child's death. I wonder if Superman is racist. I've researched it, and when the woman's child died, Joshua was saving others. He wouldn't have given up on the one person in front of him to save someone else, Mary Jane said, then projected the video onto the big screen. The young man sat down. Then a woman stood up and said, Joshua's attitude towards black people is particularly bad, which makes people suspect he's racist. Joshua has had a black friend since childhood, and they've always been close, which means he's not racist. As for why he's rude to some black people, we have to look for the reason within them, Mary Jane said. The woman nodded and said, you're saying that some black people are just too rude, which is why Superman treats them so badly, right? Yes, that's right, Mary Jane nodded. The discussion continued. Offstage, Gwen, sitting next to Peter, said, Mary Jane is amazing. She's not afraid of all these reporters, she's a celebrity, after all, Peter said. So many people came to see Mary Jane today, and no one expected her to have such a powerful aura. She answered all the questions with ease. So relaxed, Tony Stark said, approaching Joshua. He was accompanied by Dr. Banner, and the two of them were preparing to go fishing together. Tony Stark sat on a small stool and said, you have a wonderful girl. If possible, I'd like her to be a member of Stark Enterprises. He was referring to Mary Jane. Really? Joshua continued fishing silently. Dr. Banner said, Tony and I are planning to venture into space. Do you have any suggestions? Don't die, Joshua said. For him, the universe was practically harmless, but for others, that wasn't necessarily the case. Tony Stark frowned and said, is space dangerous? More dangerous than Earth? Joshua nodded. They talked for a while. Afterward, Stark said, I'll build a base on the moon. Yeah, Joshua hummed. A few minutes later, Tony Stark left. Joshua saw the two leave and prepared to leave as well, but just as he was walking, he ran into someone familiar, a woman. Cersei, one of the Eternals, spoke. Earth is about to be destroyed. Earth is the birthplace of the Celestials. Once Earth's population reaches a certain level, a Celestial will emerge and burst the Earth. Originally, The Celestials would have appeared years later, but since you stopped the war, the human population has rapidly increased. Now the Celestials are about to be born. You must help me stop them, or everyone will die." At this moment, Macri arrived with a little girl. The girl had a sour face. She disliked Joshua because he had killed an Eternal. "Really?" Joshua asked. His attitude annoyed the girl. "He's just a coward," she said. "He can't stop the Celestials." Macri quickly covered the girl's mouth, knowing how powerful Joshua was. Cersei walked over to Joshua and said, "Please help me. I don't want Earth to be destroyed. I love it here." Cersei was truly anxious. Joshua looked at the woman and said, "He's dead. The Celestials on Earth are dead." Boast. The little girl couldn't help but exclaim. The symbiote emerged from Joshua's body and declared, "I ate him. He was delicious." The symbiote licked its lips. It grinned at the little girl, its fanged mouth wide open. "You smell good, too. How about letting me take a bite?" The little girl quickly hid. Cersei was stunned. She couldn't help but exclaim, "Eat him. I was planning on keeping him as a pet, but his mouth stinks, so I had to kill him. Oh, I have to go home. Bye." He waved his hand. The symbiote's voice continued. "Those guys look delicious. Why didn't you let me eat them?" Several Eternals. When Joshua returned home, he saw Mary Jane surrounded by others, who were praising her endlessly, telling her how amazing she was. Joshua said hello and returned to his room. After a moment's thought, he journeyed to the world of One Piece. When he found Nami, he discovered she was holding onto a little girl. A girl with orange hair, who looked rather adorable. Nami released the girl and began to sort things out, while the girl stared at a nearby dog. The dog bared its teeth at the girl, looking menacing. The girl bared her teeth back at the dog, looking menacing. "Don't be like that," Nami noticed, then patted the girl's head. The girl whined. Nami then left with the girl, only to run into Nico Robin, who was also holding onto a cute, quiet-looking black-haired girl. "Let's go. They should be here too." Today was a time for the others to reunite. Usopp, Zoro, Luffy, Sanji, and the others would all be there. Robin's child was Nina, and Nami's was Mary. They had both inherited Joshua's abilities, though none were as perverse as his. They both possessed basic abilities like heat vision. Nina looked in a certain direction, and Robin said, "Nina, is there anything else you want?" "Daddy's here," Nina began. She had seen Joshua before, and had indeed sensed him before, but he had quickly vanished. Joshua had indeed left briefly, but he was preparing some gifts. Nina liked books, and Mary liked robots. After finishing, he returned to the world of One Piece. Joshua saw the rest of the Straw Hat Pirates, though they were much older now. Nami and Robin, however, hadn't changed much. Joshua casually greeted them and led Nina and Mary out to play. Joshua and the Straw Hat Pirates didn't have much to talk about. Nina was held in Joshua's arms, while Mary rode on his neck. Mary said, "Daddy, I can fly now." "That's amazing," Joshua said. "Me too," Nina replied. She and Mary had similar abilities, so now they both knew how to fly. Joshua played with the two little ones for a while. Both children were quite clingy to him. A long time later, Nico Robin arrived and said, "Let's take them to dinner?" "Yes," Joshua nodded. Then they went to eat. Mary and Nina both loved Sanji's food and were big eaters, even rivaling Luffy. Joshua looked at the two little ones. They ate even more than he did. Time passed slowly, and soon everyone went to bed. Joshua sat in his room. Nina sat between his legs, reading a book, while Mary played robot combat with him. Of course, Joshua was giving Mary a break. The little one looked like she was about to cry when she lost, but was incredibly happy when she won. "Time for bed," Nami said as she walked in. "I'm not going to sleep," Mary said. Then Nami patted her butt. Mary burst into tears. "I don't like mommy anymore," she said, squeezing into Joshua's arms, her arms around his neck. Nina pouted and tugged at Mary's clothes. That was her place. It took a long time for them to fall asleep. Joshua lay in the middle. He said, "Mary, are you asleep?" "Hey, yeah," Mary said with a snicker. Then Joshua turned to Nina. "Is Nina asleep?" "Nina is asleep," Nina said, feeling like this was a game. Nami and Nico Robin's faces flushed. After all, they had just been moisturized. Nami said, "You'd better go back quickly, or they'll pester you again." "Then take them with you," Joshua said. Nami said, "Little brat, Hurry up and go. We'll let you know when we need you. Joshua sighed and said, I understand. After Joshua left, Nami said, he's still just a child. How can you take care of him? Robin stroked her hair and said, indeed, he's too young, but in some ways, he's quite a bit. You were screaming like that just now. Robin glanced at Nami and said, you're the same? You scream every time he moves. When I met him, I thought he was just a man in trouble. Nami thought back. Nicole, Robin, and Joshua's memories were less romantic. Their initial encounters were more like a heartless pleasure. That night, Joshua had to take Mary Jane home. As they walked, Mary Jane said, Aunt May's cooking is delicious. Yeah, I like it too, Joshua said. Mary Jane stroked her red hair and said, you still have a lot of people supporting you. What you've done is not in vain, really. Joshua didn't seem to care much about it. Mary Jane began to complain, grumbling that the world was like a fairy tale. Joshua shook his head and said, there are still many people living in poverty. This world wasn't as perfect as a fairy tale. Mary Jane, upon hearing this, said, let's start an apartment foundation. I've made a lot of money over the years, and I think it should be able to help a lot of people. Joshua hated work and said, I don't want to be busy. Mary Jane smiled and said, I'll take care of all your problems. All you have to do is pay, maybe, Joshua said. Mary Jane smiled and then said, if I do well, can you give me a reward? Sure, even if you want the sun, Joshua said. Creating the sun was easy for him now. A few minutes later, Joshua walked Mary Jane home. The door was opened by a woman, Mary Jane's mother, whom Joshua had met several times. Joshua said goodbye to Mary Jane and left. After a period of peace, Joshua looked at the people outside, bewildered. What are you doing? Nami waved and said, hi, Joshua. Nina and Melly waved back. Nami and Nico Robin planned to settle down in this world. They settled there as Joshua's relatives. Really, Aunt May? Even thermal vision works, Peter said, looking at Melly in amazement. This girl could emit golden thermal vision. Joshua quietly returned to his room. Nina followed. Nina said, Mom said it wouldn't bother you. Joshua said, there's no need to lie. Sometimes it's better to be honest, but Mom said it's more fun, Nina said. Joshua rubbed his head. Were they here to play? By the way, Melly and I will go to school with you later, Nina said. Joshua, damn, his own daughter is going to class with him? That's weird, isn't it? After dinner, Nina and Melly played with Aunt May. As for Nami and Nico Robin, they were already traveling. They sent Mary and Nina here for that trip, right? Joshua was playing guitar on the rooftop, alone there at the moment, but soon a figure appeared. She floated and said, this world is truly interesting, isn't it, brother? It was Mary. She sat down beside Joshua, leaning against his shoulder. I love riding on your neck, you can ride even now, Joshua said. To him, Mary was still a child. Mary quickly rode on Joshua's neck. She let out a silvery laugh and said, I feel taller than before. Yes. Monday. Mary and Nina also went to school. Mary looked at the others and said, my name is Mary Parker. Nina put down her book and said, my name is Nina Parker. Please don't bother me unless you have anything to do. Frankly, aren't there too many Parkers in this class? The chubby kid next to Peter asked. Penny Parker, Joshua Parker, Peter Parker, Gwen Parker, Meryl Streep, Nina Parker, and they are all family. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Zombies. Melly stroked her chin, looking at the Iron Man suit before her. It was Tony Stark's creation, and it had its merits, so she was quite interested. Stark looked at Joshua and said, who are they? Melly and Nina looked very different, like Joshua. They have abilities similar to mine, Joshua said. Nina was reading nearby. This world had a lot of books, and at her leisurely pace, she could read for a long time. Melly suddenly said, not bad, Stark said, they seem to have the same annoying personality as you, Joshua said, really, how about we have a competition? Who's stronger than Joshua? Melly suddenly said. Who could be stronger than Joshua? Stark thought, if Joshua participated, then there would be no suspense at all. But if it were Melly and Nina, he thought he could test their strength. Joshua won't participate, Stark said. I'm not interested either. You guys can just play, Joshua said. He had no interest in such a little game. Nina, come join us, Melly said to Nina, who was reading. Nina nodded. Stark waved, and a suit of armor stepped forward. The suit opened, and he stepped in, saying, I won't show any mercy. Melly smiled sweetly. Stark placed his hand on the table and said, come on. Melly also placed her hand on the table and said, I'm very strong. How strong? Stark couldn't help but exclaim. I can move a star. What? Stark cried in surprise, but Melly had already pushed his hand down. Stark began to exert his own strength, but Melly's hand remained motionless. This guy's strength was ridiculous. I'll lose, Stark couldn't help but exclaim. Are they all perverts? Dr. Banner then said, I won't compete. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if the Hulk shows up. If Banner didn't come, then Nina would be the only one left. Nina stood up and began to walk. As she passed Joshua, she handed him the book. Nina won't give me any slack, Melly muttered. She'd lost. Although both were powerful, there were still some differences, like strength or intelligence. Nina said nothing, walking silently. After walking for a while, the three of them encountered a supervillain. It was the Green Goblin, also known as Norman Osborn. He looked like a monstrous creature, a demon from hell. He roared and overturned a car. Leave it to Melly, Melly said eagerly. Nina didn't move, she didn't like fighting. Then the Green Goblin spotted Joshua and grinned. Oh, look who's here? Isn't this our Mr. Superman? The Green Goblin wanted to test his own strength on Joshua. He was over 3 meters tall now, and to him, Joshua was just a tiny thing. Melly said, don't cry, Mr. Monster. As soon as she finished speaking, she rushed out, and the ground shattered. Her speed had also increased to a terrifying degree. Before the Green Goblin could react, Mary punched him in the face. This punch sent him flying into the air. Who am I? What just happened? What's going on? The Green Goblin was stunned. He didn't even see Mary's movements before he was sent flying. He was so high up that his body began to freeze. Ouch! Suddenly, a figure rushed over him. The Green Goblin turned to see Mary grinning, her orange hair flying wildly. So weak, she said. Mary plummeted downwards, then fiercely kicked the Green Goblin in the chest. Her descent increased dramatically. Bang! A loud roar echoed, and dust billowed. Mary looked at the half-dead Green Goblin below her and sighed, you still dare to provoke him. She turned and left. She walked out of the dusty area. Let's go home, Mary said. Joshua nodded, and the three of them headed home. After returning home, Joshua went back to his room and put on his helmet. He still loved playing games. The world was still random, but he didn't know what kind of world he'd encounter. He hoped it would be more interesting. Atop a tall building, Joshua looked down. There were aimless figures wandering about, walking slowly. They were clearly zombies. A zombie game. Just as he was contemplating how to play the game, someone rushed out and slammed the door shut. Joshua turned and saw a woman in a cheongsam. She was beautiful, or at least Joshua thought she was. Seeing this person, Joshua was certain this was a world from Resident Evil. Huh? The woman said, walking over to Joshua and looking at the zombies below. How dangerous? Yeah, Joshua replied. The woman was sitting on the edge of the building. From his perspective, he could vaguely see her underwear. Then, Ada Wong noticed Joshua and said, it's the end of the world, and you really have time to spare. Joshua looked away, entranced. Ada Wong said, if we want to survive, we need to forage for food in the tall building ahead. She had already searched the building for most of its food. Yes, Joshua nodded. Ada Wong stood up, patted Joshua on the shoulder, and said, jump over and I'll show you what color I'm wearing today. She stepped back, then sprinted, landing on the edge of the building and leaping over. Ada Wong pulled the trigger, blasting through the glass of the tall building ahead. Bang! She slammed into the room. Joshua watched her quickly dispatch several zombies with her gun. Her marksmanship was excellent. But he had to jump too, so he stepped back a bit and then broke into a sprint. He leaped towards Ada Wong's previous position. Joshua rolled forward. Ada Wong had already dispatched the zombies. You're quite brave, she said. Then she boldly lifted up her cheongsam, revealing the red lace, which was quite sexy. It looked a bit hollowed out, and Joshua wanted to see more of it, but Ada Wong stopped him. Here, I hope you won't be a burden. Ada Wong handed Joshua a pistol. Joshua took the pistol and said, I feel like I'm low on ammunition. Yeah, it's definitely not. We need to go to the weapons store to resupply. There's a weapons store downstairs in this building. Let's get something to eat before we go. Chapter 198 Zombies. Night fell quietly. Joshua and Ada Wang had already arrived at the weapon shop. Ada Wang began to restock his ammunition, while Joshua also began to pick up his weapons, including 2 katanas. After restocking, they both rested. Their arrival had been smooth because someone had helped them attract the zombies' attention. Joshua leaned against the wall, cleaning his gun. Ada Wang had been constantly being chased by zombies, and she felt the pressure was getting intense. She needed to release some stress, and Joshua was the perfect person to let off steam. He was handsome and young, perhaps even a novice. She walked over to Joshua, placed her hand on his thigh, and said, "Let me help you." Joshua nodded. Hiss. After a long moment, Ada Wang took a shower, feeling much more relaxed. She wiped her hair, looked at Joshua, and said, "Get some rest. We have to travel tomorrow." "Where are we going?" Joshua asked. "The survivor's base," Ada Wang said. "Oh," Joshua nodded. He hadn't seen many Resident Evil movies before, only recognizing a few of the main characters. The next morning, Ada Wang woke Joshua and said, "We have to go." Joshua nodded and slung 2 large bags over his shoulders, filled with magazines and bullets. He also had 2 assault rifles. "With all that stuff, can you still run?" Ada Wang asked. "No problem," Joshua said. The weight was nothing to him. "Then let's go." Ada Wang followed Joshua out. Ada Wang's target was a car. As the two left the weapons store, they saw zombies, and the zombies had spotted them. One zombie charged toward them, and more followed. Joshua used his assault rifle to blow the zombie in the head with a single shot. His marksmanship was excellent, practically 1 per shot. His precise kills kept the zombies at bay for a while, but only temporarily, as the overwhelming number of zombies was about to attack. Ada Wang said, "You're a good shot," and then got into a car. She started the car and said, "Get in." Joshua threw a grenade and got in. A zombie attacked from the front, and Ada Wang shot it in the head with a single shot. The car's engine roared. Whoosh, the car rushed out. Joshua used his gun to take out the sparse zombies ahead. Ada Wang said, "You're a good shot." "Did you train?" "I guess so," Joshua nodded. The zombies were getting farther and farther away. Ada Wang said, "Rest first, and you can drive later. That way we can get to the survivor base faster." Joshua nodded and closed his eyes to rest. Once they reached the suburbs, the zombies were much fewer, not as numerous as in the city. However, if the scattered zombies spotted them, they would still chase them, but it was obvious they couldn't catch up. After driving for a while, Ada Wang felt tired. She nudged Joshua and said, "You drive, I'll take a break." Joshua nodded and got into the driver's seat. Ada Wang closed her eyes and rested. Joshua glanced at Ada Wang. She was still very beautiful, with a nice figure. After about 5 hours, they arrived at a gas station. It was time to refuel. He woke Ada Wang and said, "We need to refuel, let's get some food while we're at it." Joshua had just gotten out of the car when he saw a zombie. This zombie, dressed as a gas station attendant, rushed towards Joshua. Joshua shot it in the head with a single shot. Ada Wang said, "I'll refuel, you take care of the zombies." "Okay," Joshua nodded. The zombies gradually approached. There were about a dozen of them, not many. So Joshua quickly shot them all in the head. Ada Wang said with admiration, "Headshot them all. Your marksmanship is incredible." She couldn't do that. After refueling, the two began to search for food. Ada Wang also found some women's supplies. She looked at the colorful panties and suddenly said, "What kind do you like?" "Whatever you like," Joshua said. Ada Wang looked at Joshua and selected a pair of innocent and lovely white panties that he would probably like. The two quickly found the supplies and moved them to the car. They climbed in, with Joshua driving again. Ada Wang lowered her head. Hiss, Joshua took a breath. He couldn't help but say, "This will cause trouble." Ada Wang whimpered a few times, then raised her head and said, "Drive carefully." Time passed. Ada Wang couldn't help but ask, "Why haven't you finished yet?" "Maybe I'm not used to this position," Joshua said. Ada Wang didn't give up and continued her work. After a long time, Ada Wang was finally satisfied. At noon the next day, they encountered a group of people hiding at a gas station. presumably using it as a base. There were both men and women among them. Ada Wong said, "Be careful." Joshua nodded and got out of the car. A burly black man emerged, glancing at Joshua before landing on Ada Wong. Ada Wong said, "Let's refuel." The black man replied, "Okay, but you have to let me have some fun." Ada Wong was beautiful, though he'd never had an Asian beauty of this level, so he was burning with desire. Ada Wong gave an awkward smile and said, "I need to talk to him." The black man nodded. Then, in Joshua's ear, Ada Wong whispered, "Kill these men if you can. The women here are looking terrified, it's obvious they've been abused." Joshua nodded. Ada Wong took the black man's hand and left. Then a black man approached Joshua and pulled out a knife. Bullets were scarce, so he planned to finish Joshua off with a knife. Another cotton planter is here to cause trouble. The black man suddenly stabbed Joshua with a knife, but there was no way he could hurt Joshua. Joshua pulled out his gun and shot the black man in the head. Just as the other black men were about to draw their guns, Joshua quickly shot them in the head. Joshua was too fast. After he dealt with the black men, Ada Wong also dealt with a black youth. After that, the two of them searched around and found 3 women. These 3 European and American women were quite beautiful. Ada Wong took the 3 women with him on their journey, but he couldn't mess around with Joshua as before. Chapter 199 Survivor Base. After several days of trekking, they successfully entered the survivor base. The 3 women bid them farewell. Joshua and Ada Wong were assigned to the same room. There was no need for pretense, after all, they had done it before. Ada Wong and Joshua squeezed onto the bed and began to rest. They were still quite tired. Time passed slowly. Rested, Joshua opened his eyes to find Ada Wong sleeping beside him. She was beautiful, and her skin felt pleasant to the touch. Joshua took one look and felt aroused. He pulled aside a corner of her cheongsam, revealing a captivating view. Joshua moved her panties slightly and began. Ada Wong moaned twice, then opened her eyes seductively gazing at Joshua. Ada Wong silently reveled in the pleasure. After they finished, they left, walking around the base. Soon, Ada Wong led Joshua to a man, a very handsome man, someone Ada Wong knew. The man looked at Joshua and said, "Hello, little one." He assumed Joshua was Ada Wong's underling. "Hello." Joshua sat down and began fiddling with his gun. Ada Wong and the man chatted happily, the man hinting, intentionally or not, that Ada Wong should sleep with him. Ada Wong always smiled and refused. The man sipped his wine and said, "We should enjoy ourselves while we can." Although this was a survivor base, there was no guarantee it would remain safe forever. The man reached for Ada Wong's hand. Ada Wong deftly dodged it, then said, "For now, I have no plans to take things any further with anyone else." Now that Joshua could satisfy her needs, there was no reason to look for anyone else, especially since she preferred him. The man smiled and stopped talking. The two continued their conversation, sharing their intelligence. "I thought you were dead," the man said. When they parted, he had thought Ada Wong was dead, but he hadn't expected her to be alive. What a tenacious woman. "I thought you were dead, too," Ada Wong said, looking at the man, shaking her glass. She had already drunk quite a bit. Many people had been together before, but few had survived. "We have to go," Ada Wong waved, then left with Joshua. They had to go eat. Ada Wong asked, "Anything you want to eat?" Anything that's not too bad." They soon arrived at a restaurant. They ordered a few things. While waiting for their food, Ada Wong said, "You don't seem to be afraid of zombies at all. They can't kill me, so why should I be afraid?" Joshua said. He really wasn't afraid of zombies. If a large group of zombies came, he could probably take them all out with a snap of his fingers. Ada Wong smiled. She thought Joshua, like her, had undergone special training. The food soon arrived, a plate of stir-fried shredded potatoes, a plate of stir-fried shredded pork, and a soup. The food tasted delicious, and they both enjoyed it very much. After paying, Ada Wong took Joshua for a stroll. Of course, this wasn't just a stroll. Ada Wong was thinking about an escape route, how they could escape if the zombies arrived. Joshua was also observing. But the place wasn't completely safe. A group of black men with guns surrounded Ada Wong and Joshua. One man even pointed his gun at Joshua, saying, "Get out of the way, kid." Ada Wong said, "Don't use a gun." Joshua nodded. Ada Wong took the lead, kicking a black man in the groin. The black man screamed in pain, and Joshua drew his dagger. The sharp blade easily sliced through the man's neck, killing him in one blow. There were 5 black men here, but Ada Wong and Joshua dispatched them in seconds. Ada Wong wiped the blood from her face, her chest heaving violently. She said, "We need to change clothes." Joshua was also covered in blood. The two of them strolled around the base and then returned. The two showered in the bathroom, but halfway through, things started to get worse. Ada Wong then said, "It feels like we can have a few days of peace, yeah, but I don't know how long this peace will last." Joshua said, "It'll last as long as it can, but we have to be ready to escape at any time." On the third day here, danger struck. The center of the base suddenly caved in, and zombies crawled out. Ada Wong and Joshua were still enjoying themselves in the room until they heard a loud noise and left. Ada Wong felt weak in the knees. They had done it so many times before, and their bodies were a little limp. If they had known, they wouldn't have done it so often. A zombie attacked. Joshua drew his knife and cut its neck with one blow. Ada Wong ran ahead, and scattered zombies attacked from the front. Ada Wong dispatched them with her gun. "Damn, this place has been overwhelmed in just a few days." She got in the car and said, "Get in quickly." Joshua quickly got in. Ada Wong rushed out, but the road was now in chaos, a test of his driving skills. Instead of slowing down, Ada Wong accelerated, desperate to get out of here before some idiot blocked the road. A man was tackled by a zombie. Joshua pulled the trigger, dispatching the zombie. The man looked dazed. He'd been bitten, and soon he'd become a zombie. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed a few bombs and charged at the zombie horde. Since there was no hope, he might as well kill as many as possible. After Joshua had shot a few zombies, he saw a violent explosion. Ada Wong said, "From now on, we'll only do it twice a day." Ada Wong's thighs still felt weak. Yet, Joshua nodded, though he didn't feel much. After the two of them rushed out of the base, they found a dense swarm of zombies ahead. "I'll take care of them." Joshua tossed a special bomb in front of them. The next second, the bomb exploded, sending all the zombies flying. "This is a little toy Joshua modified, and it really seems to be quite useful now." Ada Wong couldn't help but say, "This thing is great." "How did you get it?" "I made it myself," Joshua said. Ada Wong glanced at Joshua in the rearview mirror and said, "You're really amazing. Don't you know how amazing I am?" Ada Wong rolled his eyes at Joshua. Chapter 200 Giant Axe Zombie. An hour later, they finally escaped the city. As they drove, Ada Wong said, "Are we going to keep running like this?" "Maybe," Joshua said. He hadn't seen the ending of Resident Evil, but he imagined it would be a peaceful one. The car slowed down. Joshua noticed some zombies on the side of the road, chasing them after the noise. Joshua easily dispatched them with his gun. But soon, a group of zombies appeared, zombie dogs, running very fast. Ada Wong sped up. Joshua turned his gun and aimed at a zombie dog. He pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet pierced the zombie's head in an instant. But the situation was too slow. Joshua pulled out a bomb and threw it at the zombie dogs. The bomb landed among them. The huge explosion tore them apart. Joshua couldn't help but say, "These zombie dogs look so ugly." Ada Wong nodded in agreement. These zombie dogs were indeed ugly. They looked disgusting. The zombie dogs were shaken off. Ada Wong continued driving relentlessly. Time ticked by. Ada Wong stopped the car and said, "I have to go to the bathroom." Joshua followed, keeping watch. Ada Wong said, "Aren't you going to peek?" "Not interested," Joshua said. "What kind of fetish is watching people poop?" Ada Wong quickly finished. She pulled her pants back up and walked over to Joshua. Only then did she notice what Joshua was looking at, a massive zombie, wielding a massive axe. It was incredibly tall. Ada Wong said, "Be careful." Joshua, a gun in one hand and a knife in the other, nodded and said, "I'm going." The huge zombie broke into a run, and Joshua followed suit. The zombie's axe swung at Joshua. Joshua nimbly dodged, and Ada Wong began to attack. She pulled the trigger repeatedly. Bang, 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 bullets rained down, all hitting the zombie's head. While their impact was minimal, they still managed to disrupt the creature. Joshua swung his knife, severing the giant zombie's leg. The zombie's body tilted, its massive hand reaching for Joshua. Joshua twisted his body, slicing through the zombie's hand with his blade. The single blow sliced through the zombie's palm. Ada Wong couldn't help but marvel. She'd dealt with zombies like this before. They were both troublesome and dangerous, but Joshua seemed to handle them with ease. This guy was incredibly powerful. Even as Ada Wang marveled, Joshua had already decapitated the zombie. "Let's go," Ada Wang said. Yes, the two got into the car and left. Ada Wang couldn't help but ask, "Are you an assassin?" With his skill with a gun and his ability with cold weapons, he looked like an assassin. "No, I'm just passing through," Joshua said. There was nothing in this world worth assassinating. Ada Wang played a decent song. "We'll be at the next gas station soon. Let's get some gas, food, and supplies." They'd escaped in such a hurry that they'd forgotten many things, like feminine products. "Yet, I hope there's still something," Joshua said. Ada Wang then swapped places with Joshua and said, "I'm going to get some sleep, okay?" The road, from then on, was relatively easy to navigate. Even if the zombies spotted them, they wouldn't be able to catch up. 2 hours later, Joshua woke Ada Wang and said, "We're here." Joshua began to refuel, while Ada Wang kept a vigilant eye on their surroundings. After refueling, the two headed towards the supermarket. It was quiet, with no zombies in sight. Joshua walked around but didn't see any. Did they leave? He looked around and suddenly noticed some signs of human life. It was clear that people were here. No wonder there were no zombies, they must have been eliminated. Joshua warned Ada Wang to be careful. This was the apocalypse, and who knew if the people they encountered were dangerous. Ada Wang nodded and began searching for supplies. She grabbed a bag of feminine products and selected some underwear. She'd throw away anything soiled, no one would blame her anyway. Having found her supplies, the two prepared to leave, not wanting to disturb anyone. They'd taken a few steps when a girl emerged. Joshua pointed his gun at the girl and asked, "Are you alone?" The girl shook her head, then said, "There's someone else, but she has a fever. Can you help her?" Joshua glanced at Ada Wang, who nodded slowly. "Lead the way," he said. The girl immediately led the way, leading them to a dimly lit basement. She turned on the lights, and the surroundings brightened. Joshua spotted a woman lying on a bed. He moved closer, examined her, and found she was indeed feverish. Joshua said, "Come with us. It's not safe here." The girl nodded. Honestly, she felt incredibly lucky to have met Joshua. Perhaps the next time he came, he'd be using zombies. Joshua carried the woman to the car and gave her some medicine. The woman, Ada Wang, sat in the passenger seat. She said, "Drive." Yes, Joshua drove away. The girl said, "You can call me Michelle." "Hello, Michelle," Ada Wang said with a smile, then introduced herself to Joshua. The woman's name was Maya, and she was said to be very strong. Michelle said she could take on a whole horde of zombies single-handedly. A few hours later, the woman woke up and saw Michelle. Was she in the car? She sat up straight and found Joshua and Ada Wang. Michelle, seeing Maya awake, told her about what had happened. Maya patted Michelle's head and said, "I love you." Michelle nodded and said, "I love you too." It felt like their relationship was a little different. But Joshua didn't think much of it. After all, it had nothing to do with him. "I need to use the restroom," Michelle said. Yes, Joshua parked the car, retrieved his weapon, looked around, and said, "Leave the front to me." He turned his back to Michelle. Michelle pulled down her pants, but it was difficult to release. But after a while, he managed to release it. After Michelle was released, they continued on their journey. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.